Good morning and welcome to the regular council meeting of the town of Qualicum Beach. I'd like to acknowledge that we are on traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, in particular the Qualicum First Nation. And I also want to note that our fire chief, in his 30th anniversary, on paid on call for the fire department. Thank you, Pete. Well done. On the adoption of the agenda, we have a couple of changes. One under bylaws, number 7, and there will be, and you have received the green sheets with the changes, so there's no adoption, but for third reading as amended. And then we have under 9, an additional item, and that is regarding Canada Day, so that's 9E. Any other changes to the agenda? Then the agenda is adopted as amended. And we have minutes, and are there any changes to the minutes or any errors, or can we approve it by consent? Any changes? Ms. Councillor Vander.
Thank you. I just had a question regarding the minutes for April 29th, Committee of the Whole. I noted that there was some discussion from the council regarding building height and massing, and that wasn't included in the minutes. So I would like to have those comments included.
Are you aware of those comments, Ms. Svensson?
This was not brought to my attention prior to the meeting, so I can speak with Councillor Vander after the meeting to get the specifics from her. So if you'd like to leave these minutes for adoption at a future meeting, I can speak with you after the meeting and we can adopt them at a future meeting.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Skipsey.
Thank you. And there was, on page 21, the minutes from May 27th, and it was my presentation on the asks from the students. And I'm not sure it was clear what the actual asks were. They did identify a whole number of items that were listed in the minutes, but the ask was really around the addition of more seating and a walking path into the park. So those are the 2 items that should be referred to strategic planning. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear in the minutes. Thank you.
Ms. Svensson, can it be made clear in the minutes?
Yes, we can make that amendment. So those you could adopt as amended with those 2 additional.
Okay, thank you. Any other changes? Then the rest are adopted by consent as amended. Delegations. With great pleasure, Mr. Smith and Mr. Goldman about the St. Andrew's Lodge. You just push the button at the bottom.
Yes, are we ready to go? Can you hear me? Thank you for the permitting us to appear today. This is a success story, so I'm going to jump right into it to talk about the restoration of St. Andrew's Lodge, and Michael will be answering all the tough questions. So what did the interior look like prior to the partial demolition in 2020? It looked very nice. Things were in fairly good shape at the time. What did it look like as demolition started? You could see the wainscoting's disappeared, the Elizabeth Little's office, that's disappeared, the bathrooms are absolutely destroyed, and the kitchen had been ripped apart. So we had to fix all of that. So what did restoration include? We had obligatory seismic upgrades, very expensive, wheelchair accessibility, converted storage area to an accessible washroom on the outside, insulation upgrades, electrical upgrades, totally new plumbing, heat pump insulation, landscape, new exterior, storm windows, plaster repair. In essence, everything. So where did the money coming through? Well, we raised money through art and music festivals, garage sales, individual donations. Our big start was a federal grant from Heritage Canada of $211,000, BC Heritage and other grants. And we also hear the example of a concert that we had. How much money did we raise? We raised over $700,000. So we got it from a number of organizations that you can see at the top. We got it from individuals, and the only thing you see recorded in terms of individuals, if you gave $1,000 or more, you recorded here. But many people went to the concerts, and they gave that way. So it was a community effort, in other words. So we had to tear everything down to the studs. If you look at the lower right hand, that is the kitchen. So remember that. That's how the kitchen looked. We had to have seismic upgrades, meaning we had to tie and connect everything together so it wouldn't move. The electrical, now that was all ripped apart, you could put the wiring in throughout the building, throughout the lodge. Insulation, it never had insulation. Oil must have been cheap at the time, so we had to put in insulation. That's high quality insulation. There's the kitchen. You saw that a few minutes ago. There it is now, eh? And so they just did a wonderful job. That's a complete restoration of the kitchen. The last few steps, we had to install light fixtures, insulation plumbing fixtures, final coat of paint, installation of the new exterior door in the office, construction of the wheelchair ramp. We have the fanciest wheelchair ramp in town. I want you to know that. Installation of the exterior storm windows, construction of a storage cabin, and a replicated original kitchen. Now here's some of the scenes. Take a look at that. That is the restored, where you saw it was all ripped off, where all the wainscoting had disappeared. There it is right now. So they did, Anu Enterprises just did a terrific job on restoration. This, again, this is Little's office. Again, it's down to its original look in 1938. So what essentially we have is a new building in an old shell. There are the bathrooms. You can now use them. And I should say the town provided funds for an outside bathroom. That has now been completed. It is up to the town to open the outside accessible washroom. This is just a replica of a bedroom at the time. And what makes this different? You might say, well, what's so different about this? Well, it was very rare in the late 30s to have an ensuite, to have a shower available. Most of the times you had to go elsewhere. So this is what a guest might have had if they had been in the building, in a room, and not in one of the cabins. So it's now open and accessible to all. So we added the ramp, one of the finishing touches that we had. And we just like to thank everybody. I should say there's two other important things. Again, I mentioned the accessible washroom is going to be available. And we're having our grand reopening. I want everybody to remember that, please. July 4th, so please come. So we'd like to thank our donors, supporters, community, the mayor and council. You've been very helpful, I have to say. Our volunteers, board of directors, our engineers, architects, construction, and crew, Anu Enterprises, our project engineer, Bob Kolkwa, and thanks to all of you. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Any questions? Sorry, questions to the delegation? Councillor Harrison.
Just for members of the public, when will you have your grand opening?
Oh, July 4th, okay. And it starts at 1:30, Shirley? Yes. 1 o'clock. It'll be started at 1 o'clock. Entertainment all day. So everything from watermelon contests to concerts. So we hope you're available to come, at least stop by during the course of the day and mingle and mix and meet all your fellow residents from Qualicum Beach and the area. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Skipsey.
Oh, we're going to have a big cake cutting there as well, okay? And a little bit of speechifying. There'll be a few short speeches, yes, but that'll be included, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Skipsey.
Yeah, well, you're thanking council and everyone else, but I think that volunteers need a huge amount of praise for all of the work that you've done over the last number of years. It's amazing how you've brought it back, and it looks beautiful, and you should be very proud. And I think all of our community will be very proud of this, the lodge, and I look forward to using it.
Okay, thank you. I should say our motto is open to all, so it's available to the community. And after July 4th, it's going to be open to rentals. So we hope the community, the entire community, is able to use it for various public purposes, and they're certainly welcome. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
I just want to add too, when this was originally coming forward, I wasn't in favor because I thought there's no way they can raise that much money. There's no way they can raise that much money. And I was wrong. So just want to say job well done on all the fundraising, because it has been years of work. It's not just one event that you host or one individual thing. It's been years of work to get that much money. And I think there's a lot of other groups in town who have ambitious ideas, and maybe they might want to take a page or two. You might want to help them out with some ideas on how to raise funds, because you've really done an amazing job with the amount of funds you've raised.
Well, it is hard work, it's commitment, it's community work, and you have to be used to frustration, failure. We applied through grants, we paid for a granting organization, and you spend days just applying for grants. It's like fishing in a place with few fish, but the fish that you did get were very, very good to eat. And so it's hard work, but you have to have people who are committed, and you have to have people who work as a team, who have various talents, who work together and have that sense of commitment. But we found out during the course of this, the attachment that so many people in this community have to the lodge. They have their own memories. People would come back year after year. There's an example of I guess his name was Ralph Nelson, came up as a child. They came up in 1938, and the family returned to the lodge, to the cottages, for 43 consecutive years. So that's the degree of attachment and emotive connection that was held by people from outside the community and inside the community. So there's a bond between the community and the lodge, and it's back to life, and they can come and use it. So thank you.
On behalf of council, I want to thank you, Michael and Shirley, who worked very hard and don't even live in Qualicum Beach, and to your commitment, your time, your expertise, on behalf of all of us, for a successful conclusion of a very important community building project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Correspondence. There was a letter from Mr. Jeaurond, and what is council decision about that? Councillor Harrison.
Oh, sorry, there's one thing as well I wanted to pull as well, just for discussion briefly, but yeah, we can go to this one first.
Okay. So there's a staff comment about this letter. Who brought this forward? Is it Councillor Skipsey? Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering if it would still be possible to refer this information for consideration with the WHAM initiative. The recommendation from staff was to send it to the Environment and Sustainability Committee, I believe? No.
No.
Is that the other one?
Yeah, that's the next one.
It's more of a staff comment. That's just a comment, if I may. That would be my reading of it.
Oh, well, there's that council refers the letter to the Environment and Sustainability Committee for comment. But my point is that the Environment and Sustainability Committee has already made recommendations to council in their climate action matrix. And under table 2 of that, they talk about adopting policies for low embodied emissions, and the action is to incentivize renovation, deconstruction, and salvage over demolition. And then again, in that matrix, promote compact and efficient land use and increase density through auxiliary dwellings, secondary suites, garage conversions, and splitting of existing houses into 2 units, etc. And incentivize these density changes through property tax incentives, reduce setbacks, increase floor space ratios, expedited approvals, etc. So I think that the Environment and Sustainability Committee has already given council their thoughts about this kind of initiative. And I just thought that it would be good. I think it would be an important opportunity in our ways to achieve attainable housing.
Okay.
So, and then the other thing, I was hoping that we would write the province in support of this initiative, because there is some action required by the province in order to allow multiple suites in singular buildings. So.
Okay, I suggest that perhaps a motion to refer this information to the province, and that this initiative be considered under strategic planning. So if you make that motion, then we can move forward. Ms. Rilla.
Your Worship, I wonder if you'd consider allowing staff to comment to this, because it's actually quite a complex issue. So with your permission, Your Worship.
Mr. Sales.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. So the request is for specific items that are with the end goal of supporting, densification without demolition. But and that's something that the town very clearly supports. Huge potential environmental benefits of reutilizing existing structures. Where it gets more complex is when you look at the specific recommendations in this letter, and they require building code changes, changes to ownership models like the Strata Title Act, lots of very complex things that are not purely environmental. So we have an end goal that is very clearly aligned with the town's objectives, but the specific recommendations require more investigation. And so staff would be cautious, staff would recommend against a wholehearted endorsement of all the items in this letter, just for the sake of needing more analysis. This is extremely complex. The end goal is simple, but the recommendations are complex. So we may want to refer it to strategic planning for more discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, so this letter is a grab bag of a bunch of things that basically there's a sort of ideological group that generally advance stuff like this. For some reason, it's usually retired professors of landscape architecture. Patrick Condon at UBC, and then we have Stephen Shepard here. And just there's some of the things for me which I find really problematic is, for example, on page 4 of the letter, it talks about how development controls should seek to restrict housing improvements to existing building footprints wherever possible. And so that was a specific measure that Ravi Kahlon talked about when he was discussing the implementation of Bill 44 as a poison pill that was introduced in California, where the state of California mandated you're allowed 4 units on every lot, similar to BC, but they didn't have anything about setbacks or density or site coverage, and so municipalities that wanted nothing to do with that would just say, okay, you can have 4 units, but it has to be the exact same footprint. So good luck dividing up your 1,800 square foot rancher into 4 units. So this is stuff the province has already sort of looked at. There are individual things in here where I think, okay, that's sort of interesting, but the idea of doing renos only as a way to achieve density is not always as cost effective as you think. Getting a really old building up to code could actually be very, very difficult. It's not an easy task. It might not be as affordable. So I'd caution that this is more something we can receive for information. If there's a specific point or two we really want to advance to the province, that's fine. But there's other things which I think are kind of outside our rubric, like supporting the authorization of tenants in common as a land ownership model. Well, what do we know about that? Community land trusts, Vancouver has one. Vancouver has its own charter, but that's a whole other issue for essentially like a housing authority's similar function. So I look at this and I think there's so many different things that I wouldn't want to have a wholehearted endorsement. I wouldn't be in favor of that. But if there are specific policy goals that line up with existing, that don't directly contradict, I shouldn't say that, don't directly contradict existing provincial legislation, because that generally isn't a very productive conversation, but things that they haven't maybe considered, I think that might be more useful.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Vander.
Yeah, I think the whole general point of the letter and what they're trying to do is initiate some changes, and that may well, they are asking the province to look at different aspects. I think if we just continue on in the same route that we're going in terms of buildings and increasing density, then that leaves out a whole other area that has possibility. And that was essentially why we started the WHAM project, is to look at other possibilities, whether that be different forms of ownership. That's one of the alternatives. So I think it's worthwhile looking at this and taking it seriously, and asking the province to look at it and do some of the things that are mentioned in here.
Thank you. Councillor Skipsey.
Thank you. No, I appreciate the comments from my fellow councillors, and they did provide a sample council resolution, so perhaps I could bring that forward to the next meeting, and that would give staff time to make comment on that. And I don't know, I guess my question is, are we too late for the WHAM initiative? Or can aspects of this be somehow incorporated? Because I think there is an opportunity to provide more affordable housing.
Okay, if you're prepared to make a motion to refer this to the next council meeting for allow staff input on that question and the context of the letter. Councillor Young. Go ahead, Councillor Young.
I would just second my fellow councillors' motion.
Okay.
Defer.
So did you get the motion or the kind of the general intent of the motion?
We'll just defer the matter to July 15th. Councillor Skipsey is going to provide a notice of motion for that meeting, including those items.
It's referred to staff for comment. That's what we want to do, right?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to have staff's opinion on the issues that, Director Sales brought up. And I think they did provide an example of a resolution to write the province, so.
Okay, here's what we do. You provide a notice of motion for the next council meeting, and then staff can comment on that. Thank you. So that's what we'll do. Councillor Harrison.
Oh, yeah. Well, I would just point out, too, that there actually is a lot of research around this that has been done. So UC Berkeley has a website you can go to. And I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared off the top of my head to name the website. I wish I had. But it actually looks at a variety of different measures and then the aggregate life cycle emissions reduction from things like implementation of public transit, densification, different types of densification, availability of public transportation, and it actually ranks for different zip codes which measure is the most effective. So you can actually go there with your specific zip code in California and figure out what should you champion in your community to have the greatest impact for the environment. Now, I would caution, state of California is a big state, and I remember as a kid going to Disneyland and flying over Los Angeles and saying, we're here, and then 15 minutes of flying later, okay, now we're here. So I do get that California is different, but they did actually say that the biggest thing you can do for climate is have really about 4-story buildings around public transportation close to amenities, and that is the most effective way to deal with climate change. Might not be the most aesthetic, fair conversation, but in terms of greenhouse gas emissions overall, really, really tall buildings and single-family homes are the worst. And then because it's like 4 to 5 stories is like stick frame, mostly construction, there's still a fair amount of wood in it. There's some things you can't avoid, like your foundation has to be concrete. But there is actually detailed studies on what has the best environmental impact. And I feel for me, this is more about trying to preserve community character that some folks prefer, as opposed to actually engaging in the substantial literature on environmental impacts and how development impacts the environment. But again, I guess we're going to have that debate in a month potentially, so fair enough.
Thank you. Councillor Skipsey.
Yeah, and I just wanted to comment that environmental is one of the impacts. There's other aspects of it as well, including affordability and community and whatnot. And the data that was provided to me was that Qualicum Beach has 4,435 households with an average of 2 people living in each. One-person households make up almost 30% of all homes, while 55% are shared by 2 people. 3-person households represent 8%, and homes with 4 or more people account for almost 8% of the total. So I think that it is worth looking into what is currently happening with all that extra space. Thank you.
Thank you. So do we have a motion that you can read out, Ms. Svensson?
Yes, moved Councillor Skipsey, seconded Councillor Young, that the matter of density without demolition roadmap be brought forward to the July 15th, 2026 council meeting, and further that Councillor Skipsey provide a notice of motion for that meeting.
Thank you. And it was seconded by Councillor Young. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Harrison opposed? Councillor Harrison opposed. And then we have another letter, Ms. Councillor Skipsey.
Yes, I brought this one forward, and staff are saying that they feel, no, council support, so staff comment, council support the District of Saanich funding agreement. So I guess that is the staff recommendation. And I didn't know whether there was any examples of, previous examples of how the town of Qualicum Beach has accessed that funding, or whether it would simply be a letter in support of Saanich's letter.
Ms. Svensson, Ms. Varela, or Mr. Seals?
Thank you. So the LGCAP funding, as it's referred to, is a stable funding source to support climate action initiatives, so staff do support the continuation or renewal of this funding. Interestingly, the letter from Saanich doesn't actually request municipal support, so it's important to note that this is something that would be beneficial to the town if it's renewed, but it's up to council as to whether you want to explicitly take an action, because there's none requested.
Councillor Skipsey.
Well, I would like to move that we send a letter of support to the province for the continuation of the funding of the local government climate action program.
Thank you. Second to Councillor Young. Discussion? Councillor Harrison.
This makes a lot of sense too, and for folks who haven't read the letter, it specifically mentions how sometimes that stable funding is used to plan a multi-year project, and then having the funding and dropped in the middle kind of kiboshes that. Also, too, there are a lot of things that the province is sort of walking away from their investment in, and I think this would be a little bit short-sighted. It's penny wise, pound foolish.
Yes. And if it came to the UBCM, it would be supported unanimously. The next item, so did you vote on it? I thought, oh, okay, sorry, all in favor? Opposed, and carried, thank you. Just as I said, it would be passed unanimously. I forgot to take the call, thank you. Bylaws, and there have been some changes in your green pages. Ms. Varela.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll pass to corporate services for the process details, but I do want to note that you have a few new pages. We missed two very key words when we actually brought the bylaw forward, which refers to an additional 27 cents per litre for avgas and Jet A fuel. Without those two words added in there, we'd simply be selling for 27 cents per litre, which we can't do. So the change pages are before you today, and staff's apology, and I'll hand that over to corporate services for process.
Thank you. Through to Mayor Westbrook and Council. So we would like to rescind motion 26-133, which gave third reading as amended. So that will be the first motion, if we could rescind.
Thank you. We have a motion to rescind. Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Vander. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried? Please proceed.
And the new motion, as Ms. Varela has alluded to, would be that the Town of Qualicum Beach Miscellaneous Rates Bylaw 638-2009 Amendment Airport Fees Bylaw 638-07-2026 be read a third time as amended to add the words additional.
Thank you. Councillor Vander, Councillor Skipsey. Discussion? Councillor Harrison.
So just for my clarity, forgive me, there was some discussion about airport user fees with the different options and how they're applicable. Does this bylaw then reflect that debate in terms of not applying the broader set of airport user fees? Because I'm just sort of curious if this is the existing bylaw or if this is the changes that were being proposed that we got a lot of pushback on from airport users.
Through the chair to Councillor Harrison, yes, that is on page 42 of the bylaw where the general user fees were alluded to in the previous discussion, and they are only applying to commercial and for-profit entities, not for the other users. So that amendment was done in the previous bylaw revision that Council had. So we're not making any changes to that.
Just because some folks would see the user fee and then be very concerned. So I think it's just good to be really clear on that.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning, we would move forward the engineering and operations report. Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the first one is going to be the replacement of corrugated steel pipes. And I know there's an image on the report that we might want to have a look at.
Actually, the first one is the about Eaglecrest.
Eaglecrest, pardon me.
Yeah, this one. It's okay.
I'll just move the staff recommendation on that one for receiving it for information.
Okay. Seconded, but you can have the discussion. Go ahead, Mr. Colby.
Okay. So picture planting a new lawn in the summer. You can see green, but when you let people walk on the turf, like too soon, so the roots itself will not develop. And that's where the Eaglecrest, once construction is completed, that's where we're going to set. So that's going to be happening. So we look at it from that investment. Look, how is the turf going to establish and needs time for itself to step. So the reason for that, we had, during construction, we had unexpected drainage repairs. We had some irrigations as well. And we had some added features like we had the 8th hall expansion. We also added a pond. So with all these ones did push construction from construction completion in May 31st to anticipated date of July 30th. So that late finish won't give the turf enough time to establish. So with that, and that will also, and having the golf course opening in the 2026, that will create uneven grass, will be damage to the roots for the turf itself. So postponing the public opening to spring 2027 will allow turf to establish over the fall and early spring. And I will return back with a detailed report for any additional maintenance and impact to the budget. Any questions?
Thank you. Comments, questions? And I know from Neil Bidewell, who will be the pro there, that there is significant interest of people who want to play there. So it would be kind of a lot of crowd from day one, from what I can see. So thank you for that report, and it's been moved and seconded. For the discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Watson.
Okay, thank you. If we find that report, it's later on in the agenda there. There's a photo of the area that we were discussing in this first letter. There it is. Okay. So during the design of the Complete Streets project, we inspected all of the storm system along Highway 19A between the roundabout and the bottom of Bay Street, as well as over between Jubilee Park and the entrance to the restaurant there, the Shady Rest. And we discovered that 4 culverts needed to be replaced. And for a number of efficiency purposes, we elected to not include that project component in the grant application, and we elected to do it separately. So we'd like to proceed with repairing these culverts before we get the grant. So the budget, so over the winter we designed the project. We completed all the drawings, and we posted it for tender on BC Bid once we had the budget approved. And the tender closed on May 28th. We received 6 bids, the lowest coming from Waycor Holdings in the amount of $232,545. And in terms of finance, we had $365,000 in the budget. So with the contract award and the soft costs for project administration of $20,000, geotechnical engineering for $5,000, archaeological monitoring for just under $50,000, contingencies for $20,000, and the money spent to date, we're expecting this project to cost about $362,000, which is inside our $365,000 budget request. So on that note, we are seeking that Council award the contract for the replacement of corrugated steel pipes, Waterfront project to Waycor Holdings in the amount of $232,000, and sorry, $232,545 excluding GST. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone care to make that motion? Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Vander Valk, discussion. Councillor Vander Valk.
Thank you. I'm just wondering how this ties in with the development that's going to be built along the waterfront there at 3022 Island Highway.
Mr. Seals.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Vander Valk. If that project does proceed to the building permit stage, there are potentially upgrades around the particular site that would be required. This one's being done as a part of a single contract, all 4 sites, because there's deficient infrastructure. It's failing. If it had a catastrophic failure, that would be very bad. So it's better to get it out of the way now and do all 4 at once. So could it potentially be deferred to a hypothetical building permit in the future? Yes, but the risk is that a failure could be much more severe. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Skipsey.
Thank you. I'm just curious, excuse me, about the timing of when this work would take place and on which side of the road it takes place.
Mr. Watson.
Yes, thank you through the chair. This will take place, it has to be completed before November, I think it was November 15th. And the locations specifically for 3 of the 4 culverts are underneath the traveled portions of Highway 19A. So essentially what we would see is 1 lane at a time being excavated and put in a pipe, backfill, go across the other side, and we'd be able to maintain single lane alternating traffic that way. The 4th culvert, the one on the east end, is suitable for relining. So what that means is we're going to insert 600 millimeter diameter inside the, I think it's 750 millimeter diameter pipe, and fill that annular space outside the plastic with some concrete. So there would be very limited traffic interruptions for that 4th pipe.
Thank you. Councillor Skipsey.
So just for clarification then, after the busy tourist season, is that when it's going to start?
I actually haven't got a schedule yet from the contractor.
Well, it would sure slow traffic down. Any other comments, questions? And it was moved and seconded, Ms. Swenson. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Please proceed, Mr. Watson.
Thank you. So the next one is quite a large project. This is the Little Qualicum Riverbank Erosion Protection Project. Just as a reminder, this is along Little Qualicum River adjacent to the River Well Field off the south end of Waters Road. And we were successful in receiving a $843,698 grant from the Disaster Resilience and Innovative Funding Program for this project. So we have a narrow fish window for this project. It's July 15th to September 15th to complete all in-stream works. And upon notification of receiving the grant, we put it out to tender. The tender closed on June 3rd. We received 7 bids. The lowest coming from Nappet Industries in the amount of $384,060. So with the grant, the project award is $384,000. We're expecting the contract administration component to be approximately $123,640. The environmental monitoring will be around $20,000. Archaeological assessments and tendering environmental permitting work that's already taken place has been about $34,000. And so we'll have a remaining balance of about $282,000 for contingencies. So the request from staff is that Council award the contract for the Little Qualicum River Erosion Protection Project to Nappet Industries in the amount of $384,060, excluding GST. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll move the recommendation for 5D.
Okay. And seconded, Councillor Vander Valk. Discussion. Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, so a lot of these grants, usually there's a ratio. And we did skip around the agenda. It's okay. We're keeping up. But these grants usually have, like, say, a 25-75 or some other ratio. Because the bid came in so much under the total grant award, do we have the same ratio if we're spending roughly half the funds? Or, like, so how much money of this is coming from the town and how much is coming from the grant?
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Harrison, this particular grant was unusual in that it was provided 100% funding. However, Council did, some of the administration costs may not be eligible for the grant, so those will be funded through the town, and Council had approved those to be funded through the town in a previous Council resolution.
Thank you. Very good. And that was moved and seconded already? Just to make sure.
Yes. We were just correcting, we missed Seacrest, so we'll go back to that after we finish this one.
Yeah, I think you mentioned specifically 5D. Yeah.
Yes.
All in favor? Opposed? Of any carried. Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Worship. So the one I missed was Seacrest Place AC water replacement. So that was our 2026 AC water main replacement project. And we designed that over the winter. Essentially where it takes place is from the bottom of Seacrest Place, where we left off from the Seacrest Slope project, heading west to just past the beach access. For a distance of about 300 meters. It's currently a 100 millimeter AC water main that's undersized, and it's AC. And we're going to upgrade it to a 200 millimeter PVC, which will assist us with improved fire flow and take out 300 meters of undersized AC pipe at the toe of a steep slope. So that project went out to tender on BC bid closed on May 26th. We received 11 bids, the lowest being from In the Dirt Contracting in the amount of $338,403 plus GST. And with the soft cost for project management, we were expecting $31,000 for tendering and design to date. We've spent about $42,000. We're seeking $20,000 in contingencies for a total budget of $431,403, which is well inside our $900,000 project budget for 2026 financial plan.
FC. Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Vander. Discussion. Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, so this project is, again, significantly below the budgeted amount. And I'm just wondering why it's less than half the projected budgetary amount. If this is something maybe where the contractor had some ideas and we worked with them.
Mr. Watson.
That's a great question. So during the design, so we initially asked to do the whole road and from the bottom of the hill to the end of the road. And during the design, we were doing some preliminary investigations on where some of our infrastructure was located underground because we had some poor record drawings. And we discovered that just past the halfway mark of that road was 4-inch PVC line. So we thought that is not the priority we're focusing on. We'll leave that PVC in place and we'll just remove the AC and tie into that. And we'll remove the 4-inch PVC down the road when that time comes. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Skipsey.
Yeah, I just had a question. I'm curious as to how these projects are prioritized. So is it the number of residents that would be impacted or the condition of the pipes? Just for
Who'd like to speak to that?
information.
I can speak to that. Thank you. So there's a number of factors that we consider when it comes to AC pipe replacement. We look at the age of the pipe. We look at the pressure zone that it's in. Sometimes if you're in the low part of a pressure zone, that's where actually the highest pressure is inside the pipe itself. We've taken into consideration if we've had breaks there in the past, and if there's any steep slopes in the nearby area. So you don't want a whole bunch of water flowing over top of a steep slope. That'll cause erosion, just like you don't want to have a bunch of water potentially eroding the toe of a really steep slope, causing a potential collapse. And we also consider fire flow as another factor.
Thank you. That's a good, solid answer. Okay, further discussion. Councillor Harrison.
So when I was responding to an email on a completely unrelated issue, I got a response back talking about all things asbestos water main. So I don't know if it should be in the annual report where I asked the question or here, but it's just sort of about more broadly what we're doing with asbestos water main replacement. Is maybe, should I wait for the annual report?
Yes,
for that?
please.
Okay, yeah, that's not specific to this project. Thank you.
Thank you. So any further discussion? And that was moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Worship. The next one. This one is the Construction Contract Administration Project Management Services for the Little Qualicum Erosion Protection Project. It's a mouthful, but that is essentially to manage the Little Qualicum Erosion Project. We were seeking somebody with qualifications that we didn't have internally, which were the hydrotechnical engineering requirements. So what we did is we put this out to an RFP out to tender, and we were seeking essentially we put the proposal out to tender, and we asked for the contractors to bid on or provide information on their corporate profile and references, project team and qualifications, and they needed hydrotechnical engineering experience, project understanding, proposal and methodology and schedule, identification of risks and mitigations for the project, and price. So we put it out to tender. It closed on May 28th, and we received 4 proposals, and Northwest Hydraulics were the best proposal that we rated, and their price came in at $123,640. That may seem high, but one thing we didn't know at the time, because the project was going out to, the construction phase was going out at the same time, we didn't know how long it would take for a contractor to construct this. So we had to make some assumptions. The bottom line is the price may come in lower than what we are showing here. However, regardless, it is still covered under the grant project. So it's still covered under the $843,000 grant that we received for the drift grant.
Thank you.
So the recommendation is that we award the construction contract administration and project management services for the Little Qualicum River Erosion Protection Project to Northwest Hydraulics in the amount of $123,640. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Skipsey, second Councillor Harrison. Discussion. Councillor Harrison.
And I can't remember if it was for this contract or the previous one for the actual work, but there was mention of a 2-year bond for making sure that the plants are actually staying in place. Would the monitoring be done through these grants, or would that be done by town staff?
Mr. Watson.
So I think what you're talking about is there's a warranty requirement. Yep. So the contractor is required to warranty the vegetation for 2 years, and then after that, it's up to the town to monitor. And we are required, part of our DFO permit will require us that we have to monitor on, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, and 10 years, the vegetation there. Yep.
Thank you. And I just want to mention that this whole process, before we even started, we invited Chief Racoma and his associates to comment and ask for their support before we did anything. And that's the proper way to consult. Thank you. We move in a second in discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Last item.
Last item. So this one was caused quite a bit of discussion during financial planning stages. This is the Skatepark washroom and standalone drinking water fountain installation at the Skatepark site. So the report for council seeks approval to install a precast concrete public washroom with a 1,000-gallon in-ground holding tank, along with a standalone drinking water fountain at the skate park. The project is included in the financial plan for $60,000. So this was recommended because the skate park is currently served by a portable toilet, which provides the basic services, but it's not ideal for the long-term public amenity. The closest public washroom is at the field house, 175 meters away. Alternatively, the Civic Center, which is only open during when the building is open. A dedicated washroom and drinking water fountain would better serve the skate park users, ball field users, families, dog walkers, and other visitors to the area. The proposed washroom would be a precast accessible concrete unit with anti-graffiti coating, would also have a urinal inside, a 1,000-gallon holding tank, which is dramatically larger than a typical 40-gallon holding tank you'd find in a portable outhouse, and a timed lock for controlled access. We did consider flush toilets, but the nearest point of connection would have been over 100 meters away across the parking lot, which would have made that project cost prohibitive with the money we had available. The drinking water fountain would include a bottle filling station, accessible and standard height fountains, and a dog fountain at the back. The total project cost is estimated to be $57,000, and broken down it would be $45,000 for the washroom and $12,000 for the fountain. Skull Skates, the local skateboard shop, have generously offered to contribute $5,665 towards the drinking water fountain, and staff are recommending that we, if accepted, we would put their name on the skateboard donor recognition sign So the recommendation is the council approve the installation of the washroom and drinking water fountain at the skate park. Approved the proposed locations, and we should look at that over here. At the bottom, there's two images of what of the locations. Perfect. So there's where the bathroom is proposed to be located. So that you can see the donor recognition sign just to the left of the bathroom there, and the ball fields in the background. The skate park is behind the washroom, so that would be where the washroom could be positioned. And if you scroll down, there is a sample water bottle filling station. So that's at the corner of the Civic Center there in the back. So that's easily within a reasonable walking distance of the ball fields and the skate park. And it's probably a little less vandalism at that location there too. So the recommendation is to install the washroom, the drinking water fountain at the approved locations based on these, providing there's no other underground utilities that are going to be in conflict with those locations. And that we authorize skull skates to be added to the donor recognition plaque. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Young, you move all recommendations?
Yes, I'd like to move all the recommendations.
And a seconder, Councillor Harrison. Discussion? Councillor Harrison.
Well, first up, thank you, Petey, for the generous donation. I will admit, as someone who used to listen to punk rock and alternative music in my youth and play guitar, the idea of skull skates in Qualicum Beach is a little bit for me to wrap my head around. But lastly, I just want to thank Oliver for all your reports. They're very well presented, and I do appreciate the work you guys are doing. It's very well done, so thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Skipsey.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I got one over on this one. I wasn't such a big fan in the beginning. Just I thought there were other priorities, but I think it looks good. And again, thank you to Skull Skates for stepping up. And I just wondered if there was any concern about smell, being that it's only going to be pumped twice a year.
Mr. Watson.
Thank you. That's a really good question. When they clean the porta potties, they drop a biopuck inside there, and that's an enzyme that breaks down the smell and the solids. So the smell is something you'd experience with a porta potty. I can tell you from experience, however, when they do suck it out, it is pretty ripe for a couple of days. So you'd want to plan that, before like a rain event, so that there's less likelihood of people to be hanging out at the skate park. So that would definitely be a planned event, but in terms of smell, in my experience, it's no different than a porta potty.
Okay. You never see a lineup in front of a porta potty. Everybody's quick. Councillor Harrison.
Well, I have some bad memories of concerts where you do see a lineup before a porta potty. But I also wanted to point out too that the bottle filling station, one of the main uses for folks to have plastic bottles of water is going to be the fields in a hot summer day. And by having the refilling station, hopefully we'll actually cut down the amount of plastic waste we're generating. So kudos.
And I think it'll be well used by the dog walkers. It's nice that the dogs are included. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've been moved and seconded, and all three at the same time. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Watson. We went through all this before, so you could now go and get them all done. Thank you. We go back to committee and liaison. No, airport operations and miscellaneous rates bylaw. And you've got two. Pardon?
There was one letter in the correspondence I wanted to speak to, but we sort of skipped through that to. I mean, Oliver has more important. I get that.
I'll get back to you on that one.
Or I can just mention in my liaison report. That's fine.
Okay. Thank you. So the next item is committee liaison reports, isn't it, Ms. Swinson? And my report is in the package. Next is Mr. Councillor Harrison.
Okay, so there was one piece of correspondence I wanted to draw out, but we can discuss it perhaps at the next meeting, because I'm assuming Council would not be comfortable moving anything today. It was a letter from Day Homes about operating a shelter, I believe, in Parksville is the intent. And they've received letters of support already from Parksville and the Regional District in Nanaimo. But because is sort of being pulled now. If council isn't comfortable moving that, I just want to maybe look at folks if they're like a shake of the head or a nod, like, do you want to move it today or do you want to wait till the next meeting? I'm assuming the next meeting. Okay, next meeting, that's fair. But basically it would be a letter saying we support the idea in principle in Oceanside, and if you want to do anything in Qualicum Beach, please be a delegation to the town prior to that. And then for the report, there was a FCM happened, and the mayor, Councillor Young, and myself attended. They had an unprecedented number of study tours, which was actually really impressive. There were like 50, I think, over the whole conference. It was a huge number. Anyways, this one I went to was on downtown revitalization. They gave you a handout, and they actually give you a lot of really interesting information. I'm sorry, like I do want to actually highlight how they actually use grants to create more taxation revenue. So there's a few different programs. The ones that I thought were the most appropriate for the town is a storefront revitalization grant of up to $50,000. So if you had a building that's sort of gray, long in the tooth on Second, you'd actually have a grant from the city to do some beautification work. But then they also have stacking grants for things like streetscape improvement. So there's one example where they installed a public mural with city funds. They actually took away all the parking in front of the stores, which is interesting, and made it more pedestrian and bicycle friendly. And it looks, there's also more plantings on the street, and it looks much more inviting. And it actually works really well because it's part of the sort of the student housing around the University of Alberta. But where was the brownfield grant where they actually break down? Yeah, so they've, obviously City of Edmonton is on a different level in terms of their funding capacity compared to a small town. But they've awarded $19 million grants for brownfield redevelopment since 2013. And it's resulted in $219 million of construction, which translates to an annual municipal property tax uplift of $4.1 million. So basically, by getting more taxation revenue from the same parcel, you're actually driving down taxes for everyone else. So it was really interesting looking at the numbers and how they actually did it. I'll try to get photographs, I guess, and maybe share that with people. We sort of have a couple slides that are shared with council. But I think the public too, it's actually the smaller scale programs I think are more appropriate for the town. And it's really interesting looking at how you get good outcomes for citizens and the small businesses, while at the same time you recoup the funds in the long run because you're getting more revenue from the same parcel. So it was a really neat presentation. There's also an Aerosmith Water Service meeting, which I sit at, which is all things Aerosmith Dam. And there was one chart which I strongly recommend people look at. I'll try to share it, I guess, on social media. It's from the August 2025 meeting of the Englishman River Water Service. And it's a ludicrously dense chart, but it breaks down how much water is going through the Englishman and how much is actually consumed by people. And it's about 10% of the water in peak. August is usually like peak demand. So at the highest demand, the total amount is a lot less than you think for the water service. The real reason that we have the water shortages for the surrounding area, they did a LIDAR study, so that was part of the meeting, and the province had an ongoing funding for that for 5 years, where you fly a plane, you use lasers, and it basically bounces off sort of like a radar. And then you can actually see how much snow is in the snowpack. And what we used to do is we'd have a measuring station where you basically have a stick in the ground and it says, okay, this is how much snow we have, because this is how much snow is usually when we have this much, this reading at this level. And so we have 2 or 3 stations, and okay, this is the number. So when we originally created the dam, we had a number. Turns out it was 20 to 50% more than we actually have. So there's less water in the snowpack, even under ideal circumstances. And obviously this year is not an ideal year. For those of you who are really interested, I mentioned in the DWS meeting, the most read article in The Economist right now is on El Nino. And basically, the record year is 1982-83, and we're set to pass that potentially this year. And El Nino specifically causes a weather pattern in North America where Vancouver Island, uniquely in BC, gets a drought. So lucky us. So as global warming, most global warming is absorbed by the ocean. About like over 90% of the actual warming is actually absorbed by oceans. And that is caused by the water in the equator near Chile and Peru warming up. And you can see it as a red band. So we might see more and more El Ninos, which means more and more droughts. So someone who's better educated than that than me could probably speak to that. Last thing I wanted to point out too is that with the announcement for federal infrastructure funding in the past week. Interestingly, at FCM, so we had a BC caucus meeting, and I specifically asked, so Ontario got all this money for housing, is BC going to get any money? And the president of FCM says, well, I don't know anything about that. Gosh, I couldn't tell you. And here we are a week later getting the money. But the federal government also announced some new funding streams for local governments. So it's called the Building Canada Strong Fund. And just through the chair to staff, is that the new name of the gas tax, or is that a separate funding stream? I'm sorry, it's been rebranded so many times. I just want to make sure, is it an existing stream or is it a new stream?
Thank you. I'll admit I'm not aware of the lineage of the particular stream of funding, but I would say it's on staff's radar. It was actually open for applications as of yesterday, and the deadline is in July, which is inconvenient, but we are looking at options to see what we can bring forward on a short notice. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to point out there's another one, because that's the main one is Building Canada Strong Fund, is a $5 billion infrastructure fund. But they also announced a new one called the Local Impact Stream in British Columbia. And that one expires in September, I believe. Let me just check the website. Yeah, September 14th, 2026. And that's $136 million. Normally, it says it's funding of $125,000 to $1 million. And if it's infrastructure, we already have infrastructure lined up in our strategic plan. So I'm just wondering, if it's on staff's radar, that's great, but I just want to make sure that we don't find out, oh, this was a lovely program we could have applied to, and then turns out we didn't apply. So just want to highlight that. And then that's it for my report.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. And I look forward to a report from perhaps some involvement with yourself and our engineering department about the water situation with the Aerosmith Water Service, because there are some irregularities, in my opinion, about how it's being paid for and whose benefit. So I welcome participation and a report regarding that, because that's a big issue. Water will always be a big issue. So, Councillor Skipsey.
Thank you. My report is in the agenda, and I do have a notice of motion coming out of the delegation from the last meeting. And the motion is essentially to refer the matter of invasive species to strategic planning. However, the first there, be it resolved, talks about essentially communications, and I'm not sure how it's determined on what subjects we include in town tiding and noteworthy and constant contact, et cetera. But the idea is that English ivy should be a topic of interest for our residents and the town. And I know we don't have to recreate the wheel. As was mentioned by the delegation, the City of Nanaimo and the Regional District of Nanaimo have done excellent, they both have excellent information on their websites. And actually one of them, I think the City of Nanaimo did a really good video on how to cut and dispose of English ivy, so even a link to that. And I've sent that off to staff. So I would be looking for council support for the notice of motion. I would move it.
You're moving it, and Councillor Vander seconding it. Just further discussion. Councillor Harrison.
So then we're not moving the staff comment, which is referring to strategic planning. We'd be actually moving the implementation, or I just want to be sure on that.
Yeah, so the be it further resolved is that the matter of invasive species management be referred to strategic planning. So essentially we're doing that.
Okay. And the only reason that I'm just sort of asking is that for the first, therefore, be it resolved where it says educational materials, like I do understand that there's materials are there and it's probably not too much work. But I would like to get maybe staff comment. If they think it's not too much work, then I'd be happy moving it.
Ms. Varela.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the information Councillor Skipsey provided, staff are reviewing actually today. So we'll be able to post in the short term. We only had concerns if we had to go looking for the educational material. We support referring the larger matter to strategic planning. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you.
Well, I just suggest then it's pretty obvious that staff, there's a common sense thing that maybe if for whatever reason it mushrooms into something no one expected, just let us know at the next council meeting for implementation. But otherwise, I think as is, it's fine.
Thank you. Councillor Young.
I do believe in some past council meetings, we did have a discussion about also moving to 2027 strategic planning, the banning of the sale of ivy in plants in stores. So,
Yep, that's right. Thank you. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Vander.
Thank you. Well, my written report is also in the agenda. And I just wanted to add that under the deadline, our deadline for submitting our reports, I did have a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce, the board meeting, and the Visitor Center now has its student representatives at the center, and also the kiosk is now uptown, so we will have both of those open for business, and they are expecting, it's already been a very busy season, and expecting it to be a very busy summer. I didn't get a chance to mention, as was in the delegation's presentation, regarding St. Andrew's Lodge grand opening. I was waiting for Mr. Goldman to do his part of the presentation, but he's not here anymore. But I do want to say that it was definitely a great pleasure being their town liaison, and they are an amazing group of people and residents, and they did a fantastic job. And I would encourage everyone to support them for their grand reopening on the 4th of July. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Councillor Vander. Councillor.
I also have my liaison report included in the agenda, but I'd like to mention the passing of Eva Hilborn. She is a local resident that in 2027, she was named Qualicum Beach Volunteer of the Year. This wonderful lady, her lifetime is about extraordinary service to children, families, education, literacy, and community. And she passed away in June, just a couple months shy of her 100th birthday. I just want to mention that she began teaching in Manitoba at 17 years old. She came to Qualicum Beach, became the founding member of the local University Women's Club. She is active in 100 Women Who Cares. At 95, founded Wonderful World of Books, is a program to deliver books to preschoolers in Oceanside School District, and this program now serves over 500 children. She's also right up to 99 years on the board of, well, her recent passing, on the board of ELCO, which is the Early Learning Child Care Council. She was also involved with our town's Into the Woods daycare from inception. She was also awarded the King Charles III Coronation Medal of 2024. And I'm thinking that hopefully we can all get together and fundraise for a bench for her to commemorate all her service to Qualicum Beach somewhere around the library here. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. And Ms. Varela, did you still want to speak to the issue about water? I think you wanted to talk.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it would just be useful for Council and the public to be aware that we're actually bringing forward a staff report for July 15th about the state of the town's water. So to assure people, I want the public to understand that our water is actually trending up over the long term, while we do have seasonal fluctuations that are also consistent over multiple years. But we're in good shape, and we'll be reporting out on that July 15th.
Thank you. Corporate Services, Ms. Winson.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. On page 53 of your agenda package is the annual report. The 2025 annual report is being presented to Council in accordance with Section 98 of the Community Charter. It requires municipalities to make the report publicly available and that it be considered at a Council meeting before June 30th. We did do 2 publications in the newspaper advising the public, and the report includes the town's 2025 financial statement, the permissive tax exemptions, operational and performance reporting, and also the 2026 objectives and measures, and any council disqualification declarations. So there's a resolution before council that the Town of Qualicum Beach 2025 annual report be approved.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison, Councillor Skipsey, a discussion. Councillor Harrison.
Okay, so I have a oodles of questions, so I don't know if we want to do the circle thing where we ask 2 and carry on.
Yeah.
But just to go through it sequentially, so on page 66 of our agenda, it gives us basically like an org chart for the whole organization. and the number of FTEs total. And I just want to make sure my math is right, because I counted up everything on the bottom, and that was about 70 FTEs. And then would the directors be a separate 1.0 FTE as well? Because I know it says the chief CAO is 1.0, office of the CAO has a 1 FTE. And then would like fire chief, director of planning, director of finance, or is that included in the bottom number? So are those like 6 additional FTEs, or is that all the FTEs there?
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Ms. Winson.
Through the chair to Councillor Harrison, those are included, so that follows down to the table on the bottom.
So then we'd be at about 72 FTE right now, organizationally? I'm just curious, I don't know the exact number.
Through the chair, I'll turn it to Mr. Hare to confirm.
Mr. Hare.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to bring up our 2026 financial plan. I believe it's on about page 38, if my memory serves me correctly. I think we have 72 FTEs, but I can go to the, Councillor, sorry, CA
that does line up
Obrella
with
is
this
looking it
chart.
up.
Actually, I counted 70.4 in the bottom, at the two 1.0s are above, the 72.4, so that's basically the same number.
No, I think we accept that as a fact. Go ahead, next question.
Sorry, I just had it's just because I wasn't sure about the directors. Next one is on page 83 in the corporate admin reports. And there's a line that was introduced a couple of years ago about insurance incidents. And it just says processed, and then there's a 1%, 4%, 3%, 3%. I'm just curious if staff could maybe describe, when they say processed, what does that mean? Does it mean we're having more incidents? Or does it mean the timelines for responding to claims? I'm just curious what that data point is. I'm not sure what it is.
Ms. Winson?
Sorry, I didn't have the page in front of me. Can you just repeat the question?
Sorry, it's page 83. My apologies.
And sorry, the question?
So the insurance incidents on the service plan, the second last item, just above FOI requests.
Oh, yes. Yes, that's incidents that we receive a claim for. So we'll have, throughout the year, we'll have trip and falls, we'll have things that don't end up to insurance. We're able to deal with them internally. These would be actual claims that go through our insurer of MA, BC.
Ask one more.
Sure. And then 86 is the HR, where we're looking at WorkSafe claims. And we did have in previous reports a significant inflation in the cost of WorkSafe during this term. And I have been told it's partly a broader shift towards more costs, but there were also some incidents happening with our staff where we were a little bit worse than average. I'm just wondering where we are in terms of WorkSafe claims and the total amount we have to pay for that.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Ms. Svensson.
Through the chair to Councillor Harrison, I can't get into details on the costing of that exactly, but I can advise that since we've hired the additional HR health and safety, their main focus is on working on the WorkSafe with the employees to get them back to work when there is a claim rather than leaving them off during the claim. And so we hope to see a trajectory of that trending down it does take time though.
Ms. Varela.
Thank you, Your Worship. So it will be a multi-year process to see that the result in the actual fees that we pay, seeing a downward trend. But again, with that focus on health and safety, we're definitely heading in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll come back to you. I'll ask Councillor Skipsey. He had a question.
Okay, I had a number of sort of housekeeping things, so I've sent those off to staff, but I had two questions. One was the comprehensive energy audit of 3 primary town-owned buildings will be completed in 2026, and I just wonder if there's any updates on that, because it's been a long time, I think, that it's been underway.
Mr. Seals.
Yes, and thank you, Mayor Westbrook. Through the chair to Councillor Skipsey. The consultant is still working on that. The town has an independent advisor that is ensuring that the quality of that report is up to the standards that we expect. So there's a bit of back and forth going, but it's in a draft form, and we do expect it to be finished shortly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then the other one was about water, but I understand we're going to be getting a report, but on page 128, there was quite a significant jump in water consumption between 2024 and 2025. And I'm just wondering if we should be considering introducing more water conservation strategies, or why would the water production go down in 2026 versus 2025?
Ms. Varela.
Very good question, and we will be addressing that July 15th.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Vander. Councillor Young, any comments? Back to you, Councillor Harrison.
Okay, and just to add to Councillor Skipsey's point, the ERWS is also seeing a spike this year, and I'm curious as to why, because there's been a trend line for multiple years that are basically the same, and this year uniquely, it's trending up. So it's a very good question. Look forward to the next month. I did have just one sort of brief follow-up, and I'm not trying to say anything about older workers. It's not trying to be disparaging in any way, but I know as I get a little bit older, my body is not keen for hard work like I used to be, to the extent that I ever was. And I know we have a lot of workers who are near the end of their career. So we do have, one of the reasons we have 2 HR staff is because I think it's something like half our workforce is going to turn over in about 3 years.
5
roughly.
years, yeah.
5 years, sorry, my apologies, but a lot in a near order. Is there an expectation that maybe in conjunction with having the work being done by HR to improve work processes, but that hiring might also have an impact on workers' compensation claims? I'm sorry, it's conjectural, and I know it's, I'm not trying to say anything disparaging, just forgive me, like.
You know, I've seen some of these so-called older workers. I was a commercial fisherman when I first came here, and I was on deck with a 65-year-old. Everybody thought, okay, I'm 22, you're 65, I'm going to outpace you. But he never wasted any movement. I'm running around doing stuff and trying to get things done. He just goes from one to B to C. So just because you're old doesn't mean you can't keep up. He could keep up and be faster than us because he was so efficient in his movements. So I don't think elderly workers have anything to be worried about, that what they can't keep up with the younger folks, because they're much smarter and experienced doing what they have to do. Petronella.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I actually think the biggest risk to the organization is being able to transfer all that wonderful knowledge that these employees have to the next generation. So again, we were never consciously planning for succession planning at my time of arrival here, and so I think you're really seeing a good shift with that. And again, because Council has resourced our Human Resources Department, we can now pay attention to those really important things. So knowledge transfer is top of mind. Thank you, Your Worship.
And I think we all went to the Public Works open house, and everybody was impressed with how efficient and how hard these people work and know what they're doing. And it's a very good way to show your tax dollars at work. Any other comments?
I do. I just have to find the page number here. All right, so it was one thing too that was also in 2025 actual, speaking of shifts, it was the number of, so it's page 102, which is the fire service. I don't know, this is maybe for Chief Cornell, but there was about 1,000-hour drop in department personnel training hours in 2025. I'm wondering if there's a reason for the fluctuation, because it seems like 6,000 is sort of the target, and the 2 years prior is 6,000. So I'm just wondering if you can speak to that.
Thank you. Through the Mayor to Councillor Harrison. Yeah, so recruitment is one of our bigger challenges. That was one of our lower recruitment years. So when you have a recruit class of 1 or 2 as compared to 5 or 6, that keeps your hours a lot lower because the recruit classes use most of those recruitment hours. So it's all to do with the class of recruit class.
Okay.
We're back on full target now with a recruit class of 5 and out almost every weekend recruiting. So I'm hoping we'll have another class of 5 or 6 this year.
And the only other thing for Chief Cornell, it's basically the first question I asked the then RCMP Staff Sergeant when I started 7 years ago, was the medical first responder calls that I sort of note that we do have an opioid crisis here. We do have some pretty serious car accidents. And I'm wondering if there is any support that firefighters need for some of those medical call-outs where, forgive me, you're dealing with something very difficult, and then that is something that, because I think we improved the benefits for firefighters recently, but I'm just wondering if that sort of mental health aspect is something that we're looking at.
Do you wish to speak to that, Chief Cornell?
Thank you. Through your worship. Yeah, so probably a couple years ago, we rolled out mental health check-ins for all our members every 24 months. That was started long before this, where they'd have to visit with a clinical counselor to start and have that relationship with them before they need the support. That's paid off dividends over the last couple of years when we have these type of calls. They already have a relationship with a clinical counselor. They go visit the clinical counselor, and we're up and running a lot faster and getting them back working. We also have debriefings where everybody that attends the call debriefs. for mental health type stuff, but they've been finding the clinical counselor has been their go-to way to ensure our mental health is where it should be.
That's great to hear. Thank you very much. And last thing for Chief Cornell, just this year we saw a bit of a spike in structure fires, and I'm wondering if you have any recommendations for how we could prevent the number of structure fires in our town.
Mr. Cornell, your favorite topic.
It is. So I did do some research on this topic when it did pop up. So we've changed how we code calls the beginning of last year. So for reporting purposes, structure fires and fires other got coded under structure fires when you see reporting go out. So for instance, when I did some research on why it spiked so high, a dishwasher fire that caught a counter on fire, that was a structure fire because it was a fire in a structure. The chimney fire that spread to some rafters, that became a structure fire. So the pot and the stove that caught the cabinets on fire, all those became structure fires under this terminology that they weren't previously. They were grouped separately. So in essence, they are fires in a structure. We just coded them differently up until 2 years ago.
Yeah, and just for the public's benefit too, there's a few years ago, prior, like maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, the RCMP changed some of their, the way they input data, and that caused some spikes in certain areas. So it's not unique to the fire service. So thanks for that. Oh, I do have more, but I do want to sort of share. Oh.
I think you're on.
Oh my gosh, okay, well I have to be on my A game then. And then just a question on page 105. So now our planning department, this would be maybe for Mr. Sales. So we have 4 planners now, when I started we had 2. I was wondering if you just sort of give a breakdown of what the 4 planners are doing.
Mr. Sales.
Yes, and thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Harrison. So one of the planners is a planning tech and supports multiple functions in the organization, including infrastructure services. The other 2 planners, one focuses more time on current planning, so development applications and things like that. The other is more on long-term projects like the official community plan review, Bill 44, or the Eaglecrest project. So there's a lot of overlap, and they all work to support each other in all different ways, but those are their primary areas of responsibility, and I'm involved in a little bit of everything as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then, my apologies. Just on page 106, this is also again Mr. Sales. I'm just looking at the number. It's a bit hard to read because of the formatting. This is the one place where there's a little bit of a formatting issue. But basically, there's every year we have 1 new single-family dwelling unit. And I'm looking at the single-family dwelling value, and it's usually around like 15 million. So obviously, there's a lot of people who are probably replacing an existing single-family home with another one. So I'm just wondering, how do we get to the $15 million SFD value, if I'm reading it right, when we only have basically 1 unit being built every year?
Mr. Sales.
Thank you. So I would have to look into that specific number. So if that's something we can follow up on, if you send me an email, I can talk to the building inspector and clarify that. Thank you.
No problem at all. Yeah, it's for follow-up.
Well, I think we all like to hear that answer, so next time you just prepare it for your report at the council meeting. Thank you.
It sounds almost like we have a Versailles Street in town. And then 114. I think that was to the mayor's point about, yes, so this is just general municipal operations. It's called transportation and drainage, but a lot of this is sort of just like public works services that are done more generally. And I was just looking at the service hours for almost everything, and they're basically constant throughout. And to the mayor's point about learning how to do things faster and more efficiently, I was just sort of wondering, in a broad 30,000-foot approach, I'm not trying to be granular because I don't know enough to do that, but just broadly, are there ways we're looking to improve the efficiency of existing operations? Or are we sort of maintaining operations to maintain sort of a high standard? This is how we've always done it. I'm just wondering if staff can maybe just give a brief comment on ways we can maybe try to have fewer hours for the same task.
Thank you. Ms. Varela.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the town is increasing, investing in training, as well as council has made some really great decisions to expand our fleet. For example, those who attended the public open house would have seen the new Vector truck and things like that. So again, that makes us more efficient, more expedient. And again, I think now in the last few years, we've actually started documenting. So I think, again, if council wants to see, for example, in parks, if you want to see service level fluctuations, you now have enough data where you can start to understand where those person hours are being dedicated. And we're trying to link those to business decision areas. So for example, if council wanted to increase the hours of service in the Heritage Forest Park, you now have that data to actually say how much do we spend there, and that is going to be an approach that we're going to be expanding into the Public Works Department as well. So again, as we start to get data and we can better understand those pieces, but I think we're always looking for efficiency, and I think the high quality of service that we provide in Qualicum Beach is evident not only in the day-to-day, but also in your reporting and in those events like the public open houses that staff are really proud to provide to the public. So thank you, Your Worship.
And just to echo that too, being in Edmonton, the number of Albertans who said, oh yeah, I know someone, I have an older relative who lives in Qualicum Beach, and it's beautiful there, it's lovely. And so there was actually a lot of praise for our community at that event. Okay, so last page, I promise, is page 128. Councillor Skipsey already alluded to the consumption question I was going to ask, so that's also going to be answered at the next meeting. But I just had one question that there was an RDN rural housing meeting that I attended in Parksville, and a lot of folks mentioned something which I know happens frequently, not every day, but relatively frequently, where you'll have a break in water service somewhere, and it doesn't get caught because it's on the residential property owner's side of things, and suddenly they look at their water bill at the end of the year and they say, oh, it's $2,000, my God, what happened? So I'm just wondering, is there any sort of proactive work we're doing to determine these leaks, both to conserve more water and save people a shockingly high bill when they come in to pay their service fees?
Who'd like to respond to that?
I can
Swinson.
speak to that. Thank you through the chair to Councillor Harrison. When someone does have a leak and it's identified with a qualified plumber, they do. There is an application process to get credited back. They don't pay that leak fee. So we try to pull any of the invoices ahead of them going out when we do see, and we get a hold of the resident and let them know that their consumption is vastly different from the previous same period consumption, because you'll always have two different consumptions based on the time of the year. But we can leak identify ourselves, and then also when members come in, we take them through the process.
No, that's a great answer, thank you. And then honestly, my last question was the AC water main replacement. So this is the right time to ask it. So yes, I did get an email from someone where that is their bête noire, is AC water main replacement. We do have a report on our website. A few years ago, we did an analysis of the content of asbestos in our water, where it's incredibly low, basically non-existent. I would point out that the memo isn't dated, because I know roughly when we did it, it was roughly 3 years ago. But just for the public's benefit too, just because we do have that memo with Bob Weir and Ms. Rella is the concurring signature, so I know it's this term, but it would have been at the start of the term. It's just not dated for the public's benefit, but that's out there. But the question from the citizen was more that how much AC water main are we generally replacing every year? And where are we with, like, long-term, this is how much AC water main we have and how long we have to replace it. I know that's sort of in the financial plan, but just to reiterate, because that is, for some people, that's a burning question.
Thank you. Mr. Hare.
Your Worship, so our 5-year financial plan, again, Mr. Watson had spoken to how we establish what water main replacements we choose to include in the financial plan earlier, but we include a range. In terms of a dollar budget, we have basically budget ranging from approximately $1 million to $1.6 million in each of the next 5 years for the replacement of water main.
That's it? Okay. Councillor Vander.
Sorry, I just wanted to follow up on Councillor Harrison's question about leaks and Ms. Svensson's reply. My understanding is that if the leak is on the town side, the town pays for it, and if it's on the property owner's side of the property line, they pay for it. Is that correct?
There is a process to go through. I don't have all the details. It is an application that you apply, and then we determine through the, maybe Mr. Hare can elaborate, but basically it's a work through with the manager of operations to look to see if the leak was identified. Most times it's irrigation leak, so it is from the residents' side. They freeze over the winter, they don't blow the lines out, and then they have a break. They don't see it till they restart their system in the spring. But maybe Mr. Hare can elaborate further.
Yeah, so if it happens to be on the property owner's side, they would essentially, the leak would be identified. They have a certain amount of time under which to correct it, and they would get, if they do correct it, they get a credit for a portion of that leak. So they don't pay the entire overconsumption amount.
Thank you. I think we're ready to vote on approving the annual report. And then was that moved and seconded? So all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And then Next Generation 911. Who's going to speak to that? Ms. Swenson.
Through the chair, I'll pass this over to Ms. Slonsky to report out on.
Ms. Slonsky.
Thank you, Your Worship. So in BC, 911 services are a local government responsibility. Through the current 911 structure, Qualicum Beach receives the 911 services through the Regional District of Nanaimo. Stemming from changes at the federal level, a mandated program to replace end-of-life landline phone technology. This has resulted in the requirement for new agreements, with new agreements being entered into directly with applicable regional districts and TELUS. TELUS is the CRTC designated NG 911 service provider for BC. With the Regional District of Nanaimo executing the agreement with TELUS, the RDN is now in a position to establish and enter into agreements with individual member municipalities. By way of the attached agreement, Qualicum Beach is required to deliver GIS data and updates in a standardized format directly to GOBC, a provincial agency which has recently been appointed as data aggregator for NG 911 GIS data in BC. $45,000 in grant funding was made available to municipalities to assist with computer software changes. And once this new program is fully implemented, improvements to service delivery will enable real-time text messaging, audio and video streaming, and high precision geographic information system-based dispatching for 911, which will greatly improve emergency response. So staff are recommending that Council authorize the Mayor and the Director of Corporate Services to execute the agreement.
Thank you, Ms. Lansky. So we have a motion to that effect. Councillor Harrison, Councillor Vandervalk, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And next is the Twilight concert series. I think that speaks for itself. There's a recommendation. Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Vandervalk, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And announcements of closed meeting minutes or no motions. Ms. Swenson?
Yes, just on page 239 of your agenda package are the announcement of closed meeting motions that we are rising and reporting on as per council during a closed meeting.
And that's just for information. And then we have the late item about Canada Day, and you also got a green sheet or half a sheet for it. So could I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Young, discussion. Councillor Harrison, go ahead.
Oh, it's the green sheet, my.
Yeah. So all okay, Ms. Swenson?
Yes, sorry, I just wanted to make sure the first motion is that we need to rescind, and then we would have a new motion.
Yes. So can I have a motion to rescind the top piece?
Yes.
Councillor Vandervalk, Councillor Skipsey, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And then the next one, that the town provides support. So that's part of the rescinded motion.
Yeah, the first one, sorry, just for clarity, the first one is council had already approved Canada Day on Veterans Way, the closure on July 1st from 6 a.m. till 11:59 p.m. So we're rescinding that motion because Canada Day Committee has requested that the closure be for 2 days. So starting June 30th at noon to allow for the delivery of the stage truck. So the first motion you had, Councillor Skipsey and Councillor Young moving and seconding, that would be the rescinding. If we could just vote on that, and then I've got the mover and seconder for the next one.
Yeah, so we'll take care of the new motion in its entirety, because I think we rescinded both pieces. That says council rescinds, and further that was all part of the same motion. That was voted on? No? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you for reminding me. And then a new motion. Councillor Vandervalk, Councillor Young, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All All right. Thank you. Financial plan, Mr. Hare.
Thank you, Your Worship. As the majority of the proposed financial amendment bylaw relates to the Eaglecrest, to the Eaglecrest project, staff have prepared a brief PowerPoint presentation to provide background and supporting information on the project. The intention of the PowerPoint is to provide the background information and address many of the questions that Council may have regarding the Eaglecrest items in the amendment. So with your permission, Your Worship, I would like to invite the CAO to introduce the initial slides, after which I'll walk Council through the financial components of the presentation. And following the presentation, I will present the financial plan amendment report.
Okay. Ms. Frella.
Oops.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we're just getting those slides up on the screen. So as Council and the public will remember, last December, the town purchased 100 acres in the middle of Qualicum Beach, which was really exciting. From the beginning, Council has been aware that this budget was based on high-level estimates, and really it's about assessing those revenues and expenses as we went along, and that was anticipated. So we have refined the scope of the project. Condition assessments are now more clearly understood, and site conditions are better known. Director Katab had referred to some of the things that we discovered in the golf course, such as drainage and irrigation, and those had some really big price tags attached. I think the other thing that people will remember, when we first started talking about the clubhouse, you know, we had talked about cleaning some carpets and putting up some paint, and wow, has that changed along the way. And I think it's really well received by the public of what that venue has become. Certainly before we even started construction, I had met with one of the neighborhood associations that really talked about the importance of that iconic venue to the neighborhood. So I think that has been well served through this process. Amazing that we can actually achieve this without impact to taxation. And I think that's where it really comes into that unique role of the municipality stepping into the role of developer. So out of this project, both the neighborhood and the larger community is receiving 40 acres of parkland preserved in perpetuity. And then a 9-hole par 35 golf course. And again, we weren't aiming for a par 35 when we started this. It was really, I guess, maximizing the opportunities as they came along. And achieving it as a par 35 is important for those who understand the game of golf. And I won't pretend that I'm one of those, but for those who do play, they're pretty excited to have a par 35. And then we're also seeing significant neighborhood improvements. So we're seeing a proposed traffic solution at Highway 19A. We're seeing parkland improvements. We're seeing pedestrian improvements. And we're seeing neighborhood drainage improvements. And those are planned for in future years, but they're part of this budget. Again, another reason why they're subject to change, because as you get into detailed design, you're going to get more firm costing. So in our 2026 to 30 financial plan, we saw a budget that supported the acquisition. The goal was to make the golf course operational, safe, and playable. And again, we've surpassed that. We have rehabilitated the clubhouse to really reflect the iconic stature of that in the community. And we originally intended to address 2 inherited infrastructure deficiencies, and those weren't resulting from the project itself. Those were part of what we inherited when Eaglecrest came into the town. So one was a storm main replacement and one was AC pipe replacement. And part of this amendment now sees those 2 projects being funded from reserves. So again, with the project underway, better understanding the scope, we have to come back and amend the budget. So again, we've seen reconfiguration of the course, rehabilitation of amenities and equipment, lot servicing costs. The original budget, I think, had $200,000 in costing, just because that was what we anticipated to spend in 2025. But now we're looking at larger servicing costs because we're anticipating more servicing work being undertaken. We've also included a project contingency of $1 million that wasn't included. And I do want to remind both council and the public that it's best practice to amend that financial plan throughout the year to reflect those changes in financial planning. So normal course of business. And it's really interesting because sometimes when you see these amendments come out, you get a lot of public interest. So I've actually seen, on one hand, I can count the comments we've received on the financial plan amendment with a couple digits left over. So I really think that's reflective of how well the Eaglecrest project is landing with the public. Project timeline. People can't forget how quickly we're moving this project. So last July, we started a financial plan amendment just to authorize the expenditure, so for the purchase. We had to do that first before we could even complete the purchase. So we amended the financial plan. July to October last year saw a lot of due diligence and public consultation. And as the public should remember, we also did a rezoning and OCP amendment prior to purchase because we needed to make sure the public was supportive of achieving that density to offset the project costs. That went ahead. We saw a purchase completed in December, and then we started the pre-work in January and February. I guess you can say there was a lot of paperwork going on behind the scenes, but we actually got sleeves rolled up on the ground in March. So again, the budget at that time, when you saw the budget approved, we were midstream in some really big projects, reconfiguration of the golf course and rehabilitation of the clubhouse. So part of why we're coming back today again is this project has moved so quickly, just from March to July. And sometimes we forget when you're moving a multi-million-dollar project, how quickly those changes occur. So now we're back with a refined scope, expanded project deliverables, and requesting those funding allocations. And I know as soon as the numbers come up, Your Worship, that's my cue to hand it to Director Hare. So I'll do that now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Varela.
Mr. Hare.
So this slide here is basically going back to the 2025 approved budget. So Council approved a total Eaglecrest budget of $8.825 million in 2025, and that was consisting of $8.5 million for the purchase of the golf course, $125,000 for due diligence and ancillary costs, and a $200,000 lot servicing to prepare lands for the future sale. And as the CAO had pointed out earlier, that was the budget anticipated for just a portion of the land development costs that we had anticipated we would be able to do in 2025. None of that budget was spent. There was no spending in 2025 on land servicing costs. And then the 2020, in terms of the funding for the 2025 acquisition, $2.125 million was funded through a contribution from a private donor, and $6.7 million was funded through interim bridge financing from reserves, which are to be repaid from the future Eaglecrest land sales proceeds. In terms of the approved 2026 to 2030 budget or financial plan, Council approved approximately $11.9 million in additional Eaglecrest related projects. Ms. Varela had spoken to those, and I'll just recap. These include $2.5 million for golf course reconfiguration and $625,000 for land servicing costs in fiscal 2026. Approximately $5.9 million for community improvement projects, including a Highway 19A traffic solution, parkland improvements, drainage works improvements, and pedestrian enhancements, and provisions for storm main and asbestos cement water main replacements. As previously noted, staff now believe the storm and water main replacement project should be funded from reserves rather than land sale proceeds, as they're not related to the purchase of the golf course itself. And the approved financial plan therefore includes approximately $11.9 million in projects, with many of the outer year projects remaining to subject future council decision making regarding timing and scope and timing of proceeds from land sales. The year in which the budget provision is included and a budget book page reference is included on this slide in terms of where they appear in the financial plan document. When the 2025 budget that I spoke to earlier is combined with what's included in the 2026 to 28 project budgets, the total Eaglecrest project budget is approximately $20.7 million. So this table compares the currently approved budget or financial plan with the proposed amendments reflecting updated information and expanded project scope. So key changes include increasing the course configuration budget by $100,000 from $2.5 million to $2.6 million, adding funding for the rehabilitation of amenities, including the clubhouse, clubhouse exterior, maintenance building, rainwater capture system, and golf course equipment. It includes increasing the land servicing funding by $175,000 to provide a total land servicing budget of $800,000, and establishing a project contingency to address potential cost changes as projects advance through the detail design. So, for example, the $2.3 million is based on high-level estimates at this point in time, and as we get into detailed design, if costs vary, there would be a contingency available to address those changes in costs. In total, these amendments increase the 2026 capital budget by approximately $3.6 million. Continuing on with the amendment, the proposed $5.9 million placeholder for budget community projects remains unchanged. As these projects proceed into detailed design, costs may be refined, and the project contingency would be available to address any required adjustments. The timing of these projects remains subject to future council decisions. The storm main and asbestos cement water main replacement projects are currently scheduled for 2026. While presently funded from land sales, staff propose, as we've mentioned before, that they instead be funded from reserves. Reserve balances are sufficient to support these projects in 2028. As a result of these changes, expenditures funded from land sales increased by approximately $717,000. Importantly, this does not imply increased land sales or additional development beyond what is currently permitted under the existing zoning in the official community plan. So this slide illustrates the proposed Eaglecrest project budget of approximately $21.2 million after the proposed amendments. And this consists of $8.825 million approved in 2025, $11,858,000 approved in the 2026 to 2030 financial plan, and the $716 proposed through this amendment. So the amendment increases the overall project budget from approximately $20.7 million to $21.2 million. The proposed $21.2 million Eaglecrest project will be funded through the $2.125 million private donation that was received and applied towards the purchase, and approximately $19.1 million from land sale proceeds. It is important to note that the timing and budget for the neighborhood improvement projects, so again, the traffic solution, parkland, and pedestrian and drainage improvements, are budget placeholders and subject to future council decision-making and the timing of land sales. There are 6 acres and 8 additional lots available for sale currently. Further, although a number of reserves were used as bridge financing for the purchase and will be repaid from the proceeds of land sales, the larger capital program continues uninterrupted through 2026. So the increased budget does not require additional land sales beyond what is currently anticipated, and proceeds from land sales are anticipated to be sufficient to fund the Eaglecrest budget. I would now like to shift briefly from the proposed financial plan amendment and reporting to the actual 2025 financial results for the Eaglecrest project. So in 2025, Council approved a total Eaglecrest budget of $8.825 million. Actual expenditures included $8.5 million for the acquisition of the property, and approximately $167,000 for due diligence and ancillary costs. Overall, the project reported a favorable budget variance of approximately $158,000. The financial results for 2026 will be reported through future quarterly financial reports. At the time of purchase, the Eaglecrest property had a appraised fair market value of $12.98 million. The difference between the purchase price and the appraised value of approximately $4.48 million represents a gifted value associated with the transaction. So just to recap, the town purchased the Eaglecrest property for $8.5 million. An appraisal done by a land appraisal company established the fair market value at $12.98 million. The difference of $4.48 million was recognized as a donated contribution and recorded as revenue. And this is how, essentially, when we have development in the town by an external developer, the contributed capital by the developers is treated in much the same way. We record the capital at its fair market value or cost, and the contribution made by the developer is recorded as contributed capital or revenue. And that's in accordance with public sector accounting standards. So a charitable receipt for the gifted value was issued at to the vendor at no cost to the town. So with that, Your Worship, with your permission, I would invite CAO, our CAO, to conclude the Eaglecrest presentation before I walk Council through the proposed financial plan amendment bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Hare. Councillor Harrison had a question at this point.
Oh, I have oodles of questions.
If you should finish the presentation.
Sure.
Okay. Ms. Varela.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just in summary, again, this project has an incredible legacy for the community. It is one of the most exciting projects I've been able to be involved in my 15 years as a CAO. So when you achieve 40 acres of parkland preserved in perpetuity at no cost, you receive a municipally owned golf course, which really becomes a social hub and an economic driver for the community. We also see those community improvements, and I think people will be really excited to see a traffic solution at Highway 19A. And then we're also going to see increased housing in a variety of forms in the neighborhood, all achieved without impact to taxation. So thank you, Your Worship. Council is to be commended for its direction on this project.
Thank you. Mr. Hare?
So, Your Worship, staff will be happy to answer questions on the presentation before we proceed to the financial plan amendment report.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, I just actually want to go back to one of the announcement of closed meetings that related to Eaglecrest, where there was a significant increase in the scope of work for their golf course reconfiguration. And because that was done in camera, the public hasn't received a report on that. I was just wondering if staff could just give a brief verbal report why that cost increased, roughly $800,000.
Sure. Mr. Colby.
Through the mayor. So when we started the projects, so usually for a golf course to do any work, so you need to hire an architect. There's a process that takes about a year before you start construction. So we have hired a consultant that have quite a bit of experience, and we went to tender to find the right contractor with the experience, and we're fortunate. So with that, we knew there are some unclear scope. So we had the main scope with the work that was identified, but the unclear scopes were the condition for some of the irrigations as well as some of the drainages. So with those, and I've mentioned before in my previous report that those were unforeseen, but they were expected. We were expected some changes. However, it was unforeseen where are the areas that needs to be done. And we worked with the contractors. We've been very transparent with any of the change orders. We've been working very closely, myself and the consultant, for every single changes and those changes has been done based on the unit price for the actual contract. So the prices, the time is monitored with all the work.
I think one of the key points when we started, we thought we could have a par 33. And then I'm listening to the players, to the neighbors, to experts who think it would be better if you had a par 35. So we had to extend the fairway. And also we thought with the droughts and longer drought seasons, we should have more reservoir capacity. So we built a brand new pond and added some capacity for the existing ones. So we probably have enough water now. If it didn't rain for 60 days, we could irrigate the golf course. So I think that was a smart move. We have to provide some more pumping systems, but to be able to store enough water to irrigate the water, not using town water, but using reservation or capacity in our ponds from the rainy seasons, both in the fall and the spring, makes sense. So that's what added to the cost significantly. But I believe that as people are finding out what kind of golf course we're looking at, I was told, I think on Monday, by Neil Bidwell, who is much involved in this, that he has an interested list of people, of over 300 people now who want to play there. When it closed, when I was about to close, I think the membership was about 41. So looking at the new reconfiguration, and nobody really knew how poorly some of the things were done. Like some of the irrigation lines were a couple of inches below the surface. So every time they did aerating, they would punch a bunch more holes and create a bunch more leaks. There was a lot of issues that were hidden that we didn't know. And like Miscellaneous said, we thought, or some people thought we could just vacuum the carpets and open it up again. And if you go there now, you'll see there's quite a difference with what it was and what we have now. And I think we have a lot to be proud of, but it did cost more money than we anticipated originally. Thank you.
I just wanted to point out, because the reason why I'm a little bit confused, there's a few other things that I maybe talked to staff about this privately, so I'm not going to mention that in the meeting, but we had in the slide, it said that the due diligence was conducted between July to October of the previous year, and that predates the issuing of this bid to tender for the reconstruction work. So if there's essentially defects in the irrigation because they installed it incorrectly, basically, then is it fair to say we had completed our due diligence, or have we not completed our due diligence?
Ms. Varela.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think due diligence, there's only so much you can figure out in advance. And I think staff has talked to council multiple times about the unknown risks we were going to encounter with that golf course and with the building. So for example, the clubhouse itself had, on all four sides, we had water coming into that building. So before you could put down new flooring, we actually had to solve all of those problems outside. With the golf course, how could we have anticipated where the irrigation lines were, or the level of due diligence to understand the leaks, or the pumps, or those pieces. So again, we had a very short period of what we could consider due diligence. I think the key was, do we know enough to be sure that we can make these changes, whatever those unknown challenges were, within the potential lot sales? So again, the commitment was to keep this project on track without impact to taxation. And while the budget is increasing, so is the quality, but the land sales that are required are not. Council made those decisions with the zoning and OCP amendment in 2025. I hope that helps, Your Worship.
And then just as part of that due diligence, we received a building report which detailed the work needed in the main buildings and also some of the outbuildings. And granted, it doesn't list everything because we didn't know everything at the time. But I'm just wondering when that report might be made public for the general public.
Ms. Varela.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll consider that offline and report back on it. Thank you.
And then there have been multiple appraisals through this process from when we first started discussing this, oh my gosh, 3 years ago maybe, to today. And obviously the most current appraisals we're not disclosing because we're actively trying to sell the land, so we don't want to undercut ourselves. But I'm wondering, for some of those older appraisals, would those reports as part of our due diligence ever be published to the public, or is that something we're going to hold on to?
Ms. Varela.
Again, Your Worship, thank you. I'll consider that offline and report back.
And then too, I'm just looking, I think it's included in 8.625, but there was a lot of fees that both prior to sale and after the sale, we were working with Modus for a lot of the projected work. Is that where those funds were included for all the work that we did with Modus?
Mr. Seals.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, that's where those funds were drawn from. Thank you.
And maybe we should go around if other folks.
I think you're doing well. Go ahead.
Okay.
Carry on.
Okay, my apologies. And then the traffic solution, we heard previously that the roundabout would be 5 million, would 2.87 then be for traffic lights?
Ms. Varela.
Thank you, Your Worship. So that's correct. Right now, we're calling it a traffic solution because future council decision-making will be required. And with your permission, supplemental to my last comment, Your Worship, when I talk about considering those reports offline, the town has to receive permission. If those reports are provided by a third party, we have to provide permission to release those. So there's nothing cloak and dagger. It's simply a process here that I have to go through when releasing information that the town didn't generate. So thank you for your patience with that.
Thank you.
And then just in relating to the tax donation, one question I have is, in the purchase agreement, is that a document that's publicly available, or is that something that we have to withhold?
Mr. Hare.
I think we'll have to take that one offline as well. It is not currently a public document.
And the reason I'm just sort of asking is that at the end of the day, the discussion centers on fair market value, and if our purchase agreement says we're offering 8.5 million for the golf course, unless we specifically say we're accepting an offer of 12.9 million less 4.4 million for a tax receipt, 8.5 million would be the fair market value in my view, because that's what we pay at the time of transaction. So I'm just kind of confused by that.
Thank you. Ms. Varela.
Thank you, Your Worship. So if there's a question about that, then staff could provide that answer, and we're happy to put it in a memo format. But again, nothing cloak and dagger there. We were in compliance with accounting standards. We did receive advice from CRA and legal counsel to make sure we were between the lines. So I just want to make sure, happy to explain further if council requires additional information, but everything above board there. Thank you.
And I think, and also, we changed the zoning before we closed the deal. And then we were prepared to reverse all that if the deal didn't go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor Harrison.
Sure. Well, I think actually other folks should have, because I do have a motion I wanted to make at the tail end of everything. So I'd rather have folks ask their questions first than have everything get distracted by that.
Councillor Skipsey.
Okay, thank you. Well, I have no issue with the number B, or letter B, which is removing those items, because I agree it's not related directly to the golf course. And I don't have a problem with item C or D, but the one that gives me a little bit of pause is A, and I think part of the concern is because we haven't actually seen a breakdown of where all that money is being spent, like the additional 3.5 million. And one of those items that's mentioned is a new maintenance shed. And I'm wondering, like, what does that look like? How much does that cost? Why is that a priority over some other project in the town? So, and can that wait until we at least start drawing revenue from the golf course? So I have a number of questions there. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Varela.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the current maintenance building is in beyond bad condition. Again, if council wishes to see a tour or something like that, you certainly can, but as we can arrange that. And I think as we're replacing equipment, there's now a valuable asset that has to be protected. You want to make sure you don't have rodents and things like that accessing it. So again, the timing of it would be determined by council, but we anticipate requiring a new maintenance building. So as we know we need something, we want to put that out there in advance. Again, future council decision-making, you could decide the timing, the size, how much. You can have those discussions. It really is a placeholder because we know we're going to need something, and then future council decision-making on all of those projects. We'd bring back the maintenance building, the rainwater capture system, the traffic solution, the parkland improvements, the drainage improvements, and the pedestrian improvements, Your Worship.
Councillor Skipsey? That's it? Anyone else? Councillor Harrison?
Sorry, just a couple more. So I am a bit concerned about the target expectation for how much land we're going to sell, which I believe is roughly 19.1 million. If that's all going to be done through land sales, that's a lot of density. So my question, and I'm not trying to be difficult when I say this though, but to date, how many lots has the town sold?
Thank you. So currently we haven't sold any. We do have the process in place. We have 8 acres actively listed and 6 additional lots listed. So we are in the process again. We just purchased this in December 25. So 6 months later, we're well underway. We also had to wait for that community input, which was a really big piece. So again, the expanded budget isn't related to any increased density. Council has already chosen its preferred density for the site. Thank you.
Councillor Harrison?
Well, just the reason I'm raising that is that there's a discrepancy, without giving away the number, between the expected revenue from the density we chose and then the target revenue that needs to be taken in, to the best of my knowledge. Now, maybe there's a new appraisal I'm not familiar with, and my apologies if I'm not familiar with it, but that's just my concern, is that I'm not sure if those numbers actually line up, and maybe staff could help me with that.
Ms. Varela?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think we're straying into closed meeting discussion as far as the town's business case, land sales, those sorts of things. So we can flag that for a closed meeting. Again, the town is in a unique position here where it really is acting as the developer for the area in consultation with the public on what they want that density to look like. So if there's questions related to the business case, Your Worship, respectfully, I'd ask that we consider it in closed meeting first, because I really don't know where the edges of that conversation are going.
The reason I'm just raising that is because in our financial plan, we do have a targeted value for land sales in this year, right? That is a value in our budget. And so I'm just sort of worried if the projected land sales numbers lines up with that amended figure in our financial plan.
I've got 2 hands. I'll look over at Mr. Sales' hand. Go ahead.
Thank you. You got to speak to the last one.
I was trying to get for you.
I just wanted to note that, yes, the total value for land sales is what you noted, the 19 million. But the associated expenditures that balance off the other side of that equation are not all of them are anticipated this year. So there's a lot of future council decision-making yet to be made that, will have the benefit of information resulting from the current land sales underway. So I think it's really important to note that the land sales expected this year are not 19 million, and the expenditures this year are not anywhere close to that. So there's a lot of leeway so that the town can adjust in the future based on the information at the end of the year.
But my point is that there's a 2026 land sales in our financial plan, which specifically identifies a target number, which I believe was just under 4 million. Mr. Hare can maybe correct my number if I'm wrong. I'm trying to go off memory. I don't have it in front of me, but that's just why our budget, our financial plan, has a specific target for 2026 land sales. It is not 20 million, of course, but what I'm asking is if the consecutive years in our financial plan meet this amended target of just over $19 million.
Thank you. Mr. Hare.
Thank you, Your Worship. So over the 5 years of the financial plan, the anticipated land sales revenues match the anticipated expenditures. So we show a funding source for expenditures related to the golf course, and where it's future land sales, we report land sales as the balancing funding amount.
And just last question is, there was a lot of talk when we were doing our public consultation of if a deep-pocketed, out-of-town developer buys one of the large lots, so in this case it'd be lot the former 18th hole, what assurances do we have that they can't just ram something essentially down the community and say, this is the zoning, we're building it, have a nice day? So I'm wondering, like I know in the past we were discussing development permit areas and there'd be opportunities for community to have feedback on what's proposed. And so do we have a situation where basically a developer can say, this is what we're building and we're following all the rules, so accept it? Or is there a way for a community to give feedback on what's proposed and change the developer's intent?
Thank you. Mr. Sales.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Harrison. The community has given feedback on what it wants to see on those parcels. So there are guidelines that are clearly articulated in the request for proposals document that has gone out to potential developers. So developers can look at that and get a very clear idea of what's expected. So in answer to your question, there's no way that a developer could buy it and, as in your words, ram something else through. It's very clearly articulated what the town's looking for. It's structured in a way that minimizes risk for the town, but also for the developer, you know, as clear as we can make those expectations. So the public has already had extensive input, and that input is reflected in the RFP. Thank you.
And is the RFP then like binding in any legal way? Is my sort of question is that it's great to say this is what we expect, but someone could just say, well, here's the zoning, here are the setbacks, here's the density, I comply, I comply, I comply. I'm going to build this, or I'm going to go to the courts. Have a nice day.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So the belt and suspenders approach would be the belt, the development permit area already exists. The suspenders are, we would likely put in a form and character covenant at the time of any purchase and sale agreement. So subject to future council decision making, but council controls all of the pieces.
Thank you. Ms. Varela.
Thank you, Worship. So again, the town is in a very unique position with this because usually you're dealing with form and character purely as a governance role. In this case, you're the governance role, but you're also the owner of the property. So again, if you weren't liking the proposal that came forward, council, I would anticipate, wouldn't accept that proposal. You would do a different disposition process. You would take another approach. You would ask for other proposals, those sorts of things. So from the very beginning, we've been talking about the unique opportunity council has to see what is built actually be exactly what you choose to have built.
If somebody else came in, I mean, but obviously not developers, but there are some very experienced developers in town and out of town, obviously. If they came forward with a proposal that didn't quite match up with what we have so far, how would we consider that?
Thank you. Very good question. So if it was something that was outside the scope of the zoning bylaw, then a zoning bylaw amendment would be required. So that's a process that's well defined in terms of the statutory requirements. If it's something that's a little bit different than what we specifically asked for, but within the defined zoning, then the town could consider that without a zoning amendment, but it would be subject to future council decision making. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
And then just last question, I just want to reiterate something from a few meetings ago, but just to be absolutely clear. In the event that we don't get any bids for the 18th hole, or a bid is so egregiously like concrete, brutalist, everything, and this is not Qualicum Beach, I'm sorry, you missed the mark egregiously. Where are we financially if we don't receive that revenue this year?
Your Worship, we would basically not proceed with some of those expenditures that are in the plan unless we realize that revenue.
Okay. Good questions. Anything else?
I did want to sort of suggest one motion, but that's at the tail end, so, and not from the public.
This is not the time for the gallery to participate. Thank you. Go ahead.
Sorry, like there is, it's sort of what I want to speak to though, is that I've got a few emails, I know we've probably all read them, that are laundry list of questions, and I've also been hearing some things in public, and I'm not going to mention names because they're being very, how should I say this? I want to phrase this diplomatically, aggressive in their interpretation of events. But it's something that I did just look at the last meeting where we did have a PowerPoint, which I wasn't provided the PowerPoint before the meeting, so I'm not sure if that answers everyone's questions. But I do feel that we had a committee of the whole, unfortunately, just before this meeting, and there would probably be some extra questions on Eaglecrest that folks want to have answered. So I was hoping to do a motion to maybe have one last committee of the whole prior to the election. I don't know what month would be best, just on Eaglecrest to make sure those questions are answered before the election. But I did have a long motion that I submitted to staff at the start of the meeting, but it doesn't have to be that exact wording. But the whole point is just a committee of the whole on Eaglecrest prior to the election to make sure any lingering questions are actually answered. I don't know where the rest of the council is with that.
I think it's always good to have a public session to give as much transparency, provide as much information as people are looking for. This, as Ms. Miller said, there's no cloak and dagger, there's nothing to hide here. So when we have some more questions and council feels we should make this a public meeting, I have no problem with chairing another meeting to provide information that helps people understand what we're doing.
I'm just looking for staff to, because I know it's a busy calendar.
Yeah, we'll look at it when we get the requests. Ms. Miller?
Thank you, Your Worship. So our normal process is through the public inquiry system to answer any questions that the public has. I think council and the public has received a very transparent breakdown of where we're at with the project. Again, if there's additional questions that council would like answered, we're happy to do that. An additional meeting at this time of the year, I just simply don't see how we can squeeze in one more meeting. I think it was the last meeting where I said we've moved, our meetings have basically, I think, tripled in the last 2 years, so from like 2022. So with the election pending, the amount of inquiries, the amount of FOIs, I simply don't see how we could make another meeting happen. However, if the councillor wishes to bring that forward as a notice of motion for July 15th, council could debate that item at the next agenda.
Or if we could just answer the questions on July 15th. If we have more questions, just like today is a regular council meeting.
What I might suggest then, because we have a regularly scheduled meeting and most of the information we have, we could just add a committee of the whole section to the regular meeting. So it's not really a new meeting. And then if folks have any extra questions, it could be answered there, and that might just be the easiest way to do it. Actually, I'm looking for Ms. Varela's feedback on that, if that's a crazy idea or a reasonable suggestion.
Thank you. Ms. Varela.
Thank you, Your Worship. So answering these questions well, we were just in a committee of the whole, and you could see the type of questions that were coming at staff, the volume of those, and staff did a really great job answering those on the fly. But when questions aren't provided in advance, we can't simply provide an adequate response. So with a committee of the whole structure, we would have people not providing questions in advance. I think it would actually disserve the public. If they wish to ask questions in advance, again, we could provide those in a staff report, in our regular meeting schedule. We could prepare an additional PowerPoint. But what I'd really challenge council to say is, what is the additional information that you require beyond what has already been provided? Because I can't imagine, other than presenting the PowerPoint again, what additional information I could bring forward.
Right, so if there's a question about Eaglecrest, we can answer that. If it's in advance, we can give complete attention to the answer to the question, and we can present it at a future regular council meeting. So if you have a specific question about this or any other topic, we'll never shy away from trying to answer these questions. This is, of course, very topical. So if the question comes in writing to council, to staff, we will try and answer those questions at the next council meeting. Councillor Harrison.
I actually, the more I think about it, I think one of the reasons we have all these FOIs and extra questions and inquiries is because there's lingering questions. So with the greatest respect, I would actually move that the town host a committee of the whole as part of the July 1st to 15th regular council meeting regarding Eaglecrest.
I wouldn't support that at this point. And the reason is exactly what Ms. Varela said. When we have a committee of the whole meeting, people can fire off all kinds of questions, and staff may need to do some research and do some prep work to answer that question fully. So what I'm suggesting is send the questions in advance of the meeting so we can prepare an accurate and complete answer. Councillor Skipsey.
I guess I have a question about the budget for the golf course reconfiguration and rehabilitation and whatnot. So by approving A, are we then giving the green light to an additional $3.5 million of spending, or will there be more decision-making on how that funding is spent?
Significant council input on how that money is spent for those larger projects. So for the reconfiguration itself, we've finished the rehabilitation for the clubhouse, and we're finalizing the golf course. So again, if council wants more information on those pieces, the larger project budget of 21 million has all kinds of future council decision-making involved in it for any of those additional components, such as the maintenance shed, such as the rainwater capture system. So the budget would be the budget for the reconfiguration, which is seeing a $100,000 increase, and the rehabilitation budget as well, which has basically been completed. So I hope that answers.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Skipsey?
Well, I'm not sure, because I'm not sure whether what we are authorizing at this point by increasing the budget.
I think it was called placeholders. Go ahead.
Your Worship, that's what I was going to say. What you're authorizing is actually legislative approval for those expenditures to take place. However, as the CAO had alluded, none of those expenditures would take place without further council decision making. It just provides you the ability to be able to make those expenditures in the financial plan, in the approved financial plan.
Yeah, just to follow up. So all expenditures to date then would fall under the $2.4 million that was the delegated authority?
Sorry, can you clarify that again?
So in the release of information, we had given delegated authority for up to $2.4 million. So my question is, does everything that's been done to date fall under that $2.4 million?
Yes, currently expenditures that have taken place under the authority of the, it's actually $2.5 million budget in the financial plan, so under that $2.5 million budget authority.
Okay, and just procedurally, there was no seconder for the motion I made, right? That's just for staff? Okay, just making sure that's written down. I did have one question. So there was it was mentioned earlier that the clubhouse had water infiltration under the supports, and there was the patio had to be dug up. I'm just curious, who paid for what? Is that entirely funded by the town, by the tenant? I'm not sure on the breakdown on that.
Okay. Mr. Colby.
Yeah, so this one is for the envelope of the building. So we look at the envelope of the building, the actual structural building itself. So envelope structure, that would be under the towns. So it's the same when you look at any building in when you have the LSC is not responsible for those ones, for these costs.
So will there be a report on that separate? Like, and it just, is it, I'm just curious where the money is coming from for that then. I'm a little bit confused by the answer. Like, was it, because it sounded like it was the town was responsible for that then? So if so, where does it show up? Does it come from the reconfiguration funds or?
So Your Worship, through you, the building envelope was a town responsibility, and we will be bringing forward detailed reporting on that in the quarterly reporting on the Eaglecrest project. So actual expenditures versus what's actually been budgeted for those components as well.
Then just clarity at this point, where was the funds taken from?
So currently, the authorized budget for the golf course project is $2.5 million for 2026. So they have been spent under the authority of the $2.5 million budget, and hence a request for a financial plan amendment to provide flexibility to address future expenditures within the authority of the financial plan, subject to council decision-making.
I just want to point out the current authorization is specifically titled Golf Course Reconfiguration. I'm surprised that the clubhouse is part of the golf course reconfiguration. I would think that would be the course.
Mr. Hare.
So, Your Worship, the clubhouse is not part of the golf course reconfiguration. However, the expenditure was made under the authority of the $2.5 million in the project. So if council were not to proceed with a financial plan amendment, essentially we would not be able to proceed with the required expenditures on the reconfiguration because there would not be authority within the financial plan to exceed the $2.5 million.
Thank you. Okay. And publicly, I want to do a shout out for Mr. Ron Chiavetti, who was on site working with our engineer, with Coors, and trying to fix these problems as quick and as efficient as possible. Because if we did not know that all the concrete outside the building was sloped towards the building, so all the water was draining in, and together with him and his contacts in our engineering department and Coors, we got them all fixed. And when the building opened, I think most people were impressed with how it looked, but it certainly took a lot more than we thought. Even the fake brick front wall that just fell off, had to be replaced. So there were things that we did not foresee. I walked past that wall for a long time. I never realized it was just hanging there, and if you touch it, it would fall over. So we did some major work, but it was all necessary. So thank you, Mr. Codby, for working with Mr. Chiavetti and Coors and others to get this work done as efficiently and effectively as we did. Thank you. All done?
I was just going to say that I won't be voting in favor of this bylaw amendment because there's just too many, for me, there's too much uncertainty with the land sale approach, especially for the high value, over $19 million. I don't think it's reasonable given the density we've approved thus far. So yeah, I can't support it at this time.
Thank you. So we still need a motion to actually proceed with that. Councillor Young, moving.
I'd like to move the staff recommendations and that we will also continue to get good reporting back from our staff.
Let's keep that a separate motion.
Okay.
The motion is to the staff recommendation on your agenda. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Vander Valk. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Harrison opposed. It carries. And you wanted to make another comment, Councillor?
I'd like to have a motion that I want to thank staff for all the work they've done, and I would like to see more reporting on a regular basis as to the progress at Eaglecrest so that we're all informed, and we can also then decide also when there is new things that are coming up that we need to decide on. So I appreciate the reporting.
Thank you. Ms. Varela?
Thank you, Your Worship. So you will be receiving detailed reporting in the quarterly report that staff will be presenting in September.
Thank you. Statement of information, and that's just for Councillor Harrison.
I do want to point out, though, that last week at the Committee of the Whole, we were told this was going to be the final report for Eaglecrest, and now we're told there's more stuff to come in a future report. So I just want to say I have a little bit of a problem with that. If we're going to shut down the questions that the community was asking at Committee of the Whole on Eaglecrest, because don't worry, all your questions will be answered in a week, and then it turns out, well, there's actually more questions. I do know that some citizens were very upset about that.
Ms. Varela?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I don't believe staff ever said that was the final reporting on Eaglecrest. What we did say is we'd be giving detailed information on what we could to date. And I think the PowerPoint transparently puts that information out. We recognize that more reporting will be ongoing throughout this project, as will additional council decision making. So there won't be any one final report, probably right until we see those neighborhood improvements completed. So I see multiple years of reporting ahead, just for clarity, Your Worship.
Thank you. So that was moved and seconded and voted on and passed, with Councillor Harrison opposed. Thank you. Statement of financial information. Mr. Hare.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is to present the town's 2025 Statement of Financial Information, commonly referred to as a SOFI report, for Council's approval. Preparation of the SOFI report is a legislative requirement under the Financial Information Act and must be approved by Council and made available to the public by June 30th of each year. The SOFI report is an important accountability and transparency document that provides the public with information regarding the town's financial activities and compensation disclosures. The report incorporates both prescribed schedules required by legislation as well as the town's audited financial statements. So the legislative requirements of the SOFI are: the Financial Information Act requires municipalities to disclose council remuneration and expenses, employee remuneration and expenses for employees earning more than $75,000 annually, supplier payments exceeding $25,000, long-term obligations, any guarantee, indemnity, or severance agreements, and the town's audited financial statements and accompanying notes. In 2025, total council remuneration amounted to approximately $222,000, with reimbursed expenses of approximately $37,000. Total employee remuneration and benefits paid during 2025 accounted for approximately $7.1 million. Variances from prior years may reflect factors such as collective agreement adjustments, overtime, on-call compensation, and vacation payouts. Total supplier payments during 2025 were approximately $42.7 million, and payments greater than $25,000 are individually disclosed in accordance with the legislation. The town had no guarantee or indemnity agreements and no employee severance agreements during 2025. At the year end, the town's outstanding long-term debt was approximately $2.2 million, primarily related to fire apparatus, financing, and the East Village Local Area Improvement Project. The SOFI report also incorporates the town's 2025 audited financial statements, which received an unqualified audit opinion from KPMG, confirming that the statements fairly represent the town's financial position in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. The town reported an annual surplus of $10.8 million in 2025 and ended the year with an accumulated surplus of about $169.9 million. So in closing, the SOFI report fulfills the town's statutory disclosure obligations and supports Council's commitment to transparency, accountability, and good governance. Staff are recommending that Council receive and approve the 2025 Statement of Financial Information as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Hare. Councillor Vander, Councillor Skipsey, discussion. Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, and just, I know some people raised it, and we are doing things according to proper accounting standards with this, but I just wonder if Mr. Hare could remind folks how much of the revenue was from the rezoning of Eaglecrest? It was around $4 million-ish in this year's statements. I can't recall the exact number off the top of my head.
Oh, so Your Worship, the revenue was not from the rezoning of Eaglecrest. It represented the difference between the purchase price and the fair market value, and that was $4,480,000 of revenue that was included in 2026.
Thank you, and you explained how that works. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. Fire. Mr. Cornell, you've been waiting a long time.
Thank you. So the report before Council today is to request that Council award the tender apparatus replacement contract in the amount of $1,654,145 Canadian dollars, including PST and excluding GST, to Fort Garry Fire Trucks with a total equipment purchase budget of $1.7 million, including contingency. Tender 53, or T53, entered service in 2005 and is nearing the end of its frontline service life. To maintain the superior tender shuttle rating for more than 200 non-hydrant protected properties in the Qualicum Beach Fire Protection Area, frontline tender apparatus must be less than 20 years old. This rating is estimated to collectively save those property owners over $200,000 per year as a conservative estimate in insurance premiums. Although T53 is more than 20 years old, which is its frontline service life. Qualicum Beach has received an extension for replacement from Fire Underwriter Survey until 2028, when the new tender apparatus is expected to be delivered. The new tender apparatus must be ordered before Q3 in 2026 to be delivered in late 2028. For clarity, there is no financial outlay in 2026, only a contractual obligation that will result in expenditures in 27 and 28. The current Qualicum Beach tender apparatus can carry up to 2,700 imperial gallons of water to support suppression activities at incidents occurring more than 300 meters from a fire hydrant. Over the past 3 years, T53 has responded to more than 160 incidents, including brush fires, wildland urban interface fires, structure fires, and motor vehicle incidents. Without a tender apparatus, Qualicum Beach would be unable to respond effectively to these incidents. Given the number of incidents that 53 responds to as a frontline apparatus, it is not recommended to extend its frontline service life beyond 25 years, given increased risk of equipment failure. However, it can continue to serve in a reserve capacity. To clarify the difference between frontline and reserve capacity, frontline is when an apparatus is required as a first or second out to an incident and is needed to mitigate the incident, whereas reserve or second alarm apparatus respond to major incidents after all frontline apparatus have responded and may be used to temporarily replace out-of-service apparatus. It should be noted that Council could delay the purchase of this apparatus beyond 26 for 2028 delivery and reduce the service level for non-hydrant protected properties in the fire protection area and for the town's automatic aid partners. By decreasing the service level, the 200 non-hydrant protected properties in Qualicum Beach's fire protection area could expect to see a 32% increase to their fire insurance premiums. The approved 2026 to 2030 capital budget allocates the full replacement cost of $1.7 million for 53 in fiscal 2028. Amendments of the financial plan is proposed to reflect a payment of $1.1 million for the cabin chassis in Q3 of 27, with the remaining $600,000 in Q3 of 2028 when the completed apparatus is delivered to Qualicum Beach. When compared to the current T53, the new tender apparatus will improve firefighter safety through the inclusion of rollover protection and occupant airbags for all the seating positions. Will also include a significantly larger pump to allow it to be used as a backup engine or relay pumper in hydrant protected areas. As the chassis will be manufactured in 2027, it will be equipped with a 2027 emission compliant diesel engine, reducing nitrogen oxide emissions by more than 80% compared with the 2026 model. It should be noted that the proposed tender has increased water carrying capacity, tandem axles, increased firefighter seating when compared to currently available single axle commercial chassis on the market. Staff are recommending retaining the current Tender 53 as a reserve unit and adding it to the provincial wildfire deployment list for the rest of its reserve service life, estimated at about 10 years. Staff proposed that wildfire deployment revenues be used to offset future fire department fleet replacement costs. This approach would also provide Qualicum Beach firefighters with valuable wildfire experience. Additionally, the current T53 would act in a reserve capacity to support fires in our fire protection area, increasing water carrying capacity for an incident by 2,700 imperial gallons a minute, or imperial gallons. Alternatively, 53 could be disposed of in 2029, subsequent to the delivery of the new tender, for an estimated disposal value of approximately $130,000. This tender was procured using Canoe Procurement Group of Canada, which the town of Qualicum Beach joined in 2022. Canoe conducts procurement on behalf of its members, provide preferred pricing through trade-compliant purchasing programs. Fort Garry Fire Trucks was one of the successful proponents to Canoe's request for proposal in July of 2025, offering a 15% discount of MSRP based on this pre-negotiated discount, and the town of Qualicum Beach's past work experience with Fort Garry Fire Trucks. Fire department staff and the town's emergency vehicle technician met with Fort Garry in February 2026 to develop specifications for this proposal of this truck. As the production of 2027 emission compliant diesel engines are not expected to begin until 2027, a contingency of $45,855 has been included in the $1.7 million budget to cover unforeseen engine, build, or body modification costs associated with this new technology. For the sake of transparency, I want to make Council aware that there's another option for a less expensive cabin chassis that would be available at a savings of approximately $400,000. It would also keep our Superior Tender Shuttle accreditation, but as Fire Chief, I cannot support this option, as it not provide rollover protection and airbags for the occupants inside, carry the number of firefighters required to the scene and for training. It'll limit our future options for the fire apparatus, and they have significantly shorter warranty periods. If council's direction is to proceed with this less expensive cabin chassis, staff can work with Canoe to get pricing and bring it before our future council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that report and the clarifications. Questions? Councillor Harrison?
Well, I'm comfortable moving the staff recommendations.
On both?
If council is comfortable
Contingency?
with that.
Yep. Okay.
And then
Councillor Skipsey seconding?
Sorry.
Discussion.
Sorry, Councillor Skipsey. But I used to work in insurance ages ago. The rules have changed. I actually had a long talk with someone at FCM about whether or not insurance companies, if a community is very advanced in dealing with climate change impacts, that maybe our homeowners get a discount on their insurance. And her response is, we're not there yet, which is unfortunate, but I get it. But particularly for the rural areas around us, I think it was 32% was the variance in insurance that was mentioned by Chief Cornell. That might actually be conservative. And with costs these days for insurance, not only for our citizens, so that'd be hundreds of thousands of dollars going to insurance companies instead of staying in our community. It would also really impact a lot of people in the RDN, in the surrounding area. And if we're trying to collaborate on, ideally, the airport and water and sewer, it's hard, pardon me, if we've basically almost 50% increase in a lot of their citizens' home insurance rates. Or worse yet, the worst case scenario would be someone is no longer covered. Because there's a growing trend of that in the industry, of rural communities getting nothing. So I understand some citizens might say, why don't you do the cheaper version? But one, I think it damages our long-term interests as part of regional district. And secondly, as the chief mentioned, the airbag issue. If we lose a firefighter because we decided to cheap out on the tender, that would, I'm not comfortable with that, personally.
Thank you. You articulated the point very well. So further discussion? Councillor Vander.
I just wanted to say, in terms of looking at the less expensive option, I 100% trust Chief Cornell's judgment on that, so I have no problem at all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carry unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Chief Cornell. And then we have the monthly testing and emergency notification. Verbal update, please.
Thank you. So as many of you know, Qualicum Beach had a siren on the top of our old fire hall that got moved to our new building. So I'm going to provide a little update on where we're hoping to go with this testing of this device. So after Qualicum Beach Fire Rescue reviewed their emergency response plans, we're now found out that we have a couple of gaps in secondary or backup notification of our members. One of those is we're tied to Telus and Shaw lines for a paging service. By allowing us to bring the siren back online, allow us to activate it during those large-scale emergencies when we need to bring our members into the station, and we have full control of it. The siren is run off the generator, we push the button, there's nobody responsible but ourselves to activate that. Our firefighters are notified by obviously their pager, which has received signals from our dispatch center both over the cable and phone lines. There also is an app version that each member can have on their personal phones, also relying on another service to notify our members. Over the last 79 years, the Qualicum Beach Fire Department has served the community. It has used several methods to notify volunteer firefighters. Many of these past processes were explained to me when I joined, so I might be slightly wrong in the context, because they were passed down to me. So the process began we started 79 years ago with a phone ringing and it becoming a phone tree to call another member, and that member called another member, and everybody just showed up at the hall. When those members got to the hall, they pressed the button, the siren turned on at the hall and other locations around the community, I was told. We advanced a little bit with pagers, and that's worked out quite well for us. We've moved even further along with the app version, so the members are notified on their phone. And during that time, the siren's been used off and on. It was used 24 hours a day when I first joined, and then it would be tripping in the middle of the night, so we decided to put a timer on it so it would only trip during the day. Then we moved to our new station, and it kind of came offline. Every once in a while, we test it to make sure it works, but we really haven't been front and center with that testing, nor would a lot of new members know what that sound was in the air. The siren we're hoped to reinstate the siren as a backup firefighter notification system with monthly testing of the first Thursday of every month. at 7 p.m. The testing has to be canceled during sub-zero temperatures as ice and frost builds up between the siren housing and the impeller, is what I was told, and it'll actually freeze and wreck it. So we'll only be doing it when we're above freezing temperatures. The testing will only last for 10 to 20 seconds on those Thursday nights, while emergency notification may run for approximately 3 to 4 minutes. The public does not need to take any action when the siren sounds. It'll only be used to notify firefighters of an incident requiring their attention when the primary notification systems we have are offline. We're hoping to start the testing with the first Thursday in August, with social media and notification to the public going out in the next month.
Thank you for the update. Councillor Skipsey.
Thank you. I'm totally supportive of this, and I'm a little nostalgic. Not that I've been around for 79 years, but I certainly remember hearing the siren and thinking, oh, it's Thursday, it's fire practice night. So, yeah, I think, yeah, I totally support this.
Thank you. And there's no decision required, it's just for information. All right, thank you, Chief Cornell. Planning and Community Development, Mr. Sales.
Your Worship, could we have a 5-minute recess, please?
Yes, and we might as well make the motion to go beyond 3 hours, because I think we will.
Sure.
Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Vandervalk, all in favor? Beyond 3 hours and a 5-minute recess? Thank you. 5-minute recess. I would like to start where we left off, and that was with Mr. Sales. Please proceed, Mr. Sales.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. The first item under planning today is the OCP compliance decision for the zoning amendment for 673 First Street. I do have some slides, if you'd be so kind as to pull them up. So just for context, this first decision point in a zoning amendment process is relatively new to the town, so I'll repeat the rationale. So the province implemented some changes such that if a zoning amendment application is consistent with the official community plan and proposes residential use, predominantly residential use, then the municipality is not permitted to have a public hearing. So this introduced a step early in the process that municipalities have to go through. Many municipalities have delegated this decision to staff. To date, that hasn't been the case in the town, but we could always discuss in the future, but that's why this decision's before you today. So there's no decision being made about the actual zoning amendment. It's simply with regard to the OCP compliance, which essentially determines next steps for this application. So that preamble applies to the next two items, which relate to the OCP decision step. This proposal is at the intersection of First Street and 2nd Avenue East. It's in the area we refer to as the East Village. It's a combination of residential and commercial. The commercial is clustered on the west side of the site, on fronting First Street, with a smaller commercial potential on the far east side of the site. This is a proposal that did come before council in a committee of the whole meeting, so council's familiar with the overall presentation. And there is also a flyover, that video that the architect has circulated, that gives a really clear idea of what the proposal would look like from various perspectives. So this is the outline. Once again, small commercial area on the east side of the proposal, and then ground floor commercial here. Above the first floor, there's 4 floors above, with the top floor set back. So essentially it's a 5-story proposal through the site. Because of the recessed massing on the upper floor, it reads as 4 stories from most perspectives. So once again, 4 stories with the prominent massing and the recessed 5th floor, which you see that approach on each side of the building. This is the far east side of the site, where it's a smaller massing with a bit of commercial potential on that side. So there's 2 recommendations before council today. The first is recommendation that council deem this zoning amendment application to be consistent with the official community plan. And secondly, that the zoning amendment be referred to the Advisory Planning Commission. The referral to the APC, or Advisory Planning Commission, is often done after first reading. However, because time is marching on, there's only a few meetings left within this council's term, and also with the summer holidays, we wanted to plan the APC meeting as soon as possible, whether or not it happens before council actually considers first reading. So just back to the OCP compliance question again, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion with council, but I just wanted to note and remind council that in terms of OCP compliance, the last OCP review did address the issue of OCP compliance, because the question always comes up, what does it mean to be compliant with the OCP? So there's 10 primary goals in the OCP, and so the compliance checklist essentially states that, first of all, is the proposed land use, is it consistent with the land use designation in the OCP? So that means if the OCP says it's supposed to be residential, is it residential? Is it a mixed use zone? Is it agricultural? So very high level, is that land use designation compliant? Secondly, you go through each of the OCP goals, 1 through 10, and is it generally supportive of those goals? Does it not apply to those goals, or is it inconsistent with those goals? So that's the process that staff have gone through. And overall, staff consider this application to be consistent with the OCP. It is in an area of town where the town has been seeking residential and commercial infill. No requirement for commercial on the ground floor, as there is in the uptown area, but it does allow for the flexibility of those uses. And while not all of the goals of the OCP directly apply to this proposal, those goals that do apply, the proposal is consistent with. So in previous discussions, there's been specific aspects of the OCP that have been more questionable in terms of compliance, like the staff report notes that the density is a bit higher than the density that's identified in that zone. Now, the OCP is not a regulatory document, so it's entirely up to council whether you consider that to mean in compliance with land use. And then similarly, the OCP discusses height and states a preference for 3 stories, but allows for more. And from staff's perspective, that's not a ground for non-compliance with the OCP. So just wanted to give that background in terms of how staff approach the area of OCP compliance. And I think next time we bring this forward, maybe we'll actually include that check sheet to remind council of what that process that council endorsed through the OCP is. So with that, if there are any questions, I'd be pleased to take them.
Thank you. So we first deal with number 1, whether this is OCP compliant. Who'd like to start off? Councillor
I'll
Harrison.
move the staff recommendation for number 1.
Thank you. Councillor Young, seconding. Discussion. Councillor Skipsey.
Thank you. Okay, so I went through, I printed off the sample checklist or whatever to see if it was the sample official community plan consistency worksheet. And, the first one, okay, so I thought maybe land use compliance, it wasn't because of the density and whatnot, but hearing Director of Sales' explanation, then it probably is. But under the first one, it talks about community life at a scale that is suited to the Qualicum Beach village character. And then I had a whole bunch of question marks because I don't know if this is progressive infrastructure. I don't know if this is a healthy landscape. There was some feedback last time about it being kind of a dead zone when it comes to the landscaping. And then we also received an email this morning about Beach Creek, and I don't know how Beach Creek interfaces with this development. It also talks about green buildings. There's not enough information here to make that decision for me, and also the sense of place then nurture small town village character and ambiance, and I'm not sure that box got ticked for me. The other thing is in the East Village in the OCP, it talks about commercial uses within this area shall be located and oriented so as to maintain the compactness and pedestrian continuity of the uptown commercial core. And I think when it came at the Committee of the Whole meeting, I did talk a little bit about that, the facing on 2nd Avenue, because originally the concept, I think, was that it was going to be work-live studios, and there would be more of an interface with commercial. So my personal opinion is that I don't think that this, and also the maximum density, it's above the maximum density, which is 3.8.3. So that would be my input on that. But I did have a question, because what happens with the conditions from the original zoning? Because the first time it was rezoned, it went from industrial to this residential commercial. And I think at that point it was a big ask. And there were conditions such as 15% of the appraised value of the land, once it is upzoned, should be contributed to the Affordable Housing Fund for the town. And also about 50% of them should be adaptable design. It references North Vancouver, but that's probably out of date at this point. And it also talked about a requirement for a contribution to improving traffic infrastructure, as well as density bonuses on each unit that was considered a density bonus, that there would be funds go again to the Affordable Housing Reserve. So I'm just wondering, what happens to all of that if this is rezoned? Thank you.
Thank you for the detailed list of questions. Mr. Sales.
Thank you. So the comprehensive development zone that's currently in place on the property has conditions. Most of those conditions are not really relevant anymore in terms of so for example, the adaptable design guidelines. At the time when that requirement was put in place, there wasn't really that much in the building code. That's progressed tremendously. The building code is quite strong now on adaptable requirements. So that's not really relevant. The contribution towards the intersection, I think, is still relevant, because this development would increase the traffic going to that First and Memorial intersection. So definitely a live conversation. The bonus density requirement, that really applies more directly to the community amenity contribution policy, which doesn't really support that type of an approach anymore. So I would just say that the conditions have evolved considerably since those requirements were put in place in, I believe it was 2009 or 2008. Now, if there's specific aspects that council wants to advance, so for example, if council says, well, the intersection is extremely important to us, that's a fundamental decision-making factor, please let staff know, and then we can discuss ways to advance that. Or if, we want to look at some of those adaptable requirements again. So if the intention's there, we can look a little more into it, but certainly those conditions would not be taken and applied directly to a new zoning. And if they're not applied directly by council, then they don't get transferred. Thank you.
The other point Councillor Skipsey made was, and the other two buildings across the street, there were a number of units below market value rent. Is there any appetite to see if that's possible here?
Thank you. So once again, that's a discussion we can have with the proponent, and if there's anything that is important that we want to see some more discussion on, please let us know, and then we can have the discussion. Right now, as it's being proposed, that's not included, but certainly could be discussed.
The intersection is extremely important. We've been looking at changing that for years, but always kept in mind that maybe the railway would do something different, or they would be easier to work with. And that's always been kind of a hold-up, including crossing at Berwick, where we at one time thought we could cross there. So this intersection is going to be even more critical, and that's therefore extremely important for both the new development and the existing traffic. Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
I was just going to suggest that when we're discussing number one, I think this is more like number two conversation for a lot of this. So maybe just more for the OCP part, let's focus on the OCP. For my view on this, there is established case law, which as far as I'm aware is still relevant with the city of Prince George. And there was a rural property where they tried to build a healthcare center, and the neighbors didn't like it for whatever reason. And because they did it initially with the rezoning, and the rural zoning did not mention that use for healthcare, it was overturned by the courts, and they had to redo the zoning. So they did an OCP amendment. Neighbors fought it again, and the neighbors lost this time because they did the right process and it went through. And the key thing that the court's basically said is that as long as there's a link in your OCP for some part of your OCP to the project, then it is compliant with the OCP and it's just a rezoning. So for me, this hits enough check marks that you can debate whether it perfectly hits every aspect of it, but is this the intended use? It is. At the end of the day, and there's some other conversations we could have maybe in part 2, but for me, the basic thing is it basically meeting the zoning requirements set out in our OCP for the comprehensive development zone, and this project does.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Vander Valk.
Thank you. Well, I don't share that opinion that it does adhere to the OCP. My understanding is that the area was meant to be more an extension of the business community along East 2nd Avenue, or along 2nd Avenue. And I think that by having the commercial, most of it is not facing 2nd Avenue. So I don't see that it is, I realize that there doesn't have to be ground level commercial on the whole street, but the town paid a lot of money for East 2nd to be repaired and made more pedestrian friendly, and special way to plant the trees and special paving. And I think that in order to follow the general idea of East Village, that there does need to be commercial on more along 2nd Avenue. So I don't think, in terms of that, I don't think it does meet the requirements. And then I also have gone through the checklist, and I would say there are a lot of things that we don't know about, know what the situation would be, but for the first point, complete compact community land use, again, the whole OCP project or review that we went through and had public input, we had workshops, we had lots of discussion, and what came out of that, again, was that people, the majority of people, residents, wanted to keep that community feel, small scale feel, and as it says in here, community life at a scale that is suited to the Qualicum Beach Village neighborhood. I don't think that this proposal is suited to the Qualicum Beach Village character, so it doesn't comply to my mind in that regard. And then low impact transportation, what they're talking about in this description, a lot of it has been met, basically because that's, again, the town has created the network transportation and spent a lot of money on East 2nd, fixing that road. But the part that I have a question about is the safety in that location with having the parking where it is, or where the proposal has it. So that to my mind is questionable. But there's a lot of things, economic prosperity. Again, they talk about emphasizing local businesses, but the majority of the building is not businesses, it's residential, and there's no businesses along East 2nd, or for the most part along East 2nd, and then sense of place, nurture small town village character and ambiance. So I don't think that it does meet what was the intention of the official community plan in terms of the feel of that project and how it fits in with the feel of the rest of the town, and I don't think that it meets the requirements for the OCP.
Thank you. Could we show the slide where there is a commercial component near Berwick and then the other end of the building, and does that go around the corner? When you're looking at the bottom left corner, that's commercial, right? So where does that stop? Right there. And then there's the place where there is, how far is that distance between where the corner commercial is and at the other end at Berwick? What would be the distance roughly?
For clarity, do you mean the distance all the way from First Street to Berwick?
No.
No.
Where the commercial portion ends on the corner of the building on 2nd Avenue and Fern, there's on the corner is commercial, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So how far is that distance between there and the unit at the end by near Berwick, which is also commercial, I believe?
If you give me a minute, I can calculate it. I would note, though, that it sounds like there's some concerns with maybe the site plan and exactly how the uses are configured on the parcel. I don't think that relates directly to OCP compliance, right? So in other words, if the concern is whether there's a little bit of commercial on 2nd Avenue East or more commercial on 2nd Avenue East, that's not really a deciding factor in whether or not it complies with the OCP. That's really a site plan issue that we can get into later. So that's just a little bit of a preamble. If council wants to consider continue the discussion, I can look up that number, but just wanted to offer that context. Thank you.
I was just commenting on the fact that there is commercial along East 2nd, but not all the way to Berwick. Councillor Harrison.
Just a few points too, because I was involved with East Village when we originally invested that money. But it is also too, there is a local area service agreement which pays back a lot of that money over time. But the whole point of the windy 2nd Avenue is that it was supposed to be pedestrian first. And there's even discussions of essentially not allowing vehicles during the daytime hours along that street. Now, if you want to have commercial all the way through it, I mean, there's a fair argument. There's some people in the community I've talked to already who say, why do they have residential on the ground floor? So before I was elected, I went to a Qualicum Beach Residents Association meeting where the owner of, back then it was called The Source, and I think one of the folks in the audience who was behind this project were both presenters at that KBRA meeting. And the owner of The Source, Emily, mentioned how for a lot of her older clients, they need to park directly in front of the store. Otherwise, they can't walk a half block anymore. They're just too infirm. Sorry, it's just the reality. And I ran into Marlis Diamond at a grocery store last week, and not in town for anyone who has favorites with your grocery stores in Qualicum Beach. She mentioned how in the Berwick, everyone moved in and was walking around, and now there's a lot of walkers in Berwick. So I just want to highlight there's a lot of folks who have mobility issues. I understand the concern that it could be commercial. The other side of the street, though, is entirely commercial on the ground floor. The businesses haven't all moved in yet, but there is a commercial presence on one side. But if you really want to highlight the commercial, you'll have to implement more parking, and we have trees in the way. As far as the existing commercial being sort of dangerous in terms of the parking, it's basically identical to what we currently have with Naked Naturals across the street. It's not substantially different. The parking is basically there. Now it's angled slightly differently. I think there might be one or two more spots, but it's basically the same from my understanding of if you're going to Naked Naturals and you park across the street from Naked Naturals where you park. So I just think some of this stuff, again, to Mr. Sale's point, we're getting into number 2, where this is not really number 1. But I just want to highlight that it's actually intentional that we're not making it exactly like the downtown core, because that was not what 2nd Avenue was supposed to be. It was supposed to be very much a pedestrian area for people walking back and forth. And the last lens, too, is one of the things I did mention in my report. We had an Access Oceanside meeting, there was actually a comment from a Qualicum Beach resident who mentioned she's been mentioned at a previous meeting and didn't like her name being mentioned, so I'm not going to say her name, but she was very impressed with this. But for a lot of folks who have significant mobility issues, there's a bit of trepidation about elevators. So having a ground-oriented unit is actually something for folks with mobility issues they'd be looking for. And as long as those ground-oriented units are done in a way that is accessible for folks with mobility issues, I think that would offer people an opportunity to move to something that's actually appropriate. But this is, again, this is number 2. So yeah, I feel more comfortable to just stick to number 1. So my apologies on that.
You keep going back to number 2 as well. That's okay. Councillor Skipsey.
Thank you. So I have a question about the density, like in the OCP under 3.8, East Village, it talks about a maximum density of up to 80 dwellings per hectare. And when I looked at what was approved across the street, it said that after accounting for density bonuses up to 50%, the maximum permitted density would be 120 dwellings. But I don't see any reference to a maximum of density bonuses. Was that removed from this version of the OCP?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Skipsey. So language like that, it reads as regulatory. The OCP is not a regulatory document, so it likely was removed in this last iteration of the OCP.
Councillor Vander.
Well, I have a couple of questions about parking, since we're getting into that, and I think it does affect whether this is OCP compliant or not. Because I would like to understand why or how much parking is required if there is a commercial space involved. For example, across the street in the existing buildings, how many parking stalls were supplied or were built by the owners for parking for those commercial spaces? And what would be the requirements for this one?
Mr. Seals.
Thank you. Parking requirements are set out in the zoning bylaw. There's a fixed ratio, so one parking stall for each, a ratio of sorry, excuse me. The number, I think it's 1 per 40 square meters, but I'd have to look that up. It isn't in the staff report, but once again, I understand, Councillor Vander Valk, that it relates to OCP compliance from your perspective, but that is a zoning requirement that's already written and it's been in place for many years. So I don't think that relates to the OCP compliance question. Thank you.
Okay. Well, if we can't agree that based on commercial versus residential on the ground level does influence how the area is being used and whether it's OCP compliant, then I would still maintain that there are a lot of items in terms of the actual design and the scale that do not meet the requirements for the OCP. And again, I would emphasize that we went through the whole OCP process, and that low scale, human scale, community or village character was very important to almost all of the people that were at those workshops, and that was reflected in what came forward in the OCP. So I don't think that this is OCP compliant simply based on the fact that it isn't at a scale that is fitting in with the village character of Qualicum Beach.
Thank you. So, Mr. Seals, if we decide that it is not compliant, what would the process look like to proceed with this?
Thank you. So if it's not compliant with the OCP, then an OCP amendment would be required. So that would trigger a public hearing both for the OCP amendment and also for the zoning amendment. It would be combined in one, but that would be the process.
Councillor Young.
I'm sorry, I really don't agree with a couple of my fellow councillors. I have a lot of respect for our professional staff, and when they say something is OCP compliant, I really think that there's so much more experience with the OCP than I am, and so I will agree with that this is OCP compliant. But I'm also in favor of this project because there is a need for this project. We are predominantly seniors in this community. We're an aging population, and we want to age in place. And for a healthy lifestyle for those seniors that are going to right-size or upsize from their house, they need to move into a condo that's within the downtown core.
Councillor Young, this is only whether this is OCP compliant.
So I am, okay, when it comes to talking about commercial space, having residents there is also an economic driver. They're not storefronts, but they are shopping local.
Thank you. So, further discussion on whether this is OCP compliant or not, and we did get a motion. Ms. Swenson has moved and seconded. Further discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Vander opposed. It carries. So the next item is whether we send it to the APC, and we can perhaps have some more discussions about the things that we want them to consider. And as I mentioned, and others have mentioned, the traffic is a big issue. Parking is a big issue. But that intersection on Memorial and Fur is the biggest, I think, the biggest problem. And I don't think we should approve any development until we've sorted that out. And we're going to get a traffic study report, I believe, the next council meeting.
Thank you. So we are expecting one soon, hopefully for the next meeting. One thing I would note is that I think we all share the opinion that that intersection is vital to the consideration of this project. But it wouldn't be something that we would refer to the APC, just because the APC is an advisory committee primarily focused on design and planning, not traffic safety. So that would happen in parallel for council's consideration, but not be a referral to the APC.
And my comment about the intersection was more directed to you and staff and the proponents. Anything else? Councillor Harrison.
I just point out, back when Adam Walker was our MLA, we had a local government get-together at I think it was in Parksville at Beach Acres, in the restaurant there. And there was a presentation from a guy named Luke Murray. He owns Arise Developments, and he does try to include affordable units in some of his private sector projects. But the one thing he highlighted in the presentation, and he actually brought the receipts, he showed the pro formas, where if you want to get things from a developer, a fast process makes it more likely. If it's a slow process, the cost that they're borrowing money in the interim basically eats up the ability to do really interesting things. So it's not that it's impossible to ask things from proponents, that's fine. But if we have a very slow process, it's less likely to get done. And the second thing is, I think we also need to make sure that there's a difference between the approval process and the construction process, because it's going to take several years to build, no matter when it's approved. So if we have a timeline for what we're doing at first, that might be something where we could proceed with the approvals, because before it's actually done, it has to be built. And then also, too, if you really want to loop things in, you'd want to think about what would be the best time to build in relation to that project. So I just highlight that because it is a multi-year process to go from approval to actual construction, that it's not like we have to wait 3 years for first to be built. If we wait 3 years, it actually might line up with an approval in the next half year.
Thank you. Any other comments? Like you were mentioning comments before, now is the time to make those kinds of comments. Councillor Young.
I am a proponent for condo bills around our downtown core for our local residents that want to downsize, and it gives them a better, healthier lifestyle that they can walk into downtown to get all their services. And at that point also, they're not driving. So this is a well-needed project. When it was presented last time informally to council, it was very well received. And I've heard lots of comments from other residents just saying how, yes, they're looking forward to it and they want to get on that waiting list. And I think it's a beautiful project. Sorry.
Thank you. I don't think anybody disagrees that the architect did a very good job in going around the neighborhood, looking at different places like Milner Gardens and St. Mark's Church, just trying to get the feel of Qualicum Beach and what would suit there. So my compliments to the architect and the company that designed this. But you've given you, from the previous approval that we had from years ago, 2 extra floors. That's a significant value. And so I think it's fair that it works both ways. And that's why I'm saying we need some significant support for the intersection and also for some lower cost housing like we did in the earlier iteration from the Second Avenue developments. So that's where I stand, and I would be in favor to proceed to go with the OCP to the APC. Councillor Vander Valk. Thank you.
Well, as I understand it, we haven't really given them the 2 extra floors yet, so.
The design allows for 2 more floors.
My question is the presence for what is recommended for the APC to look at. I'm just curious why the presence of ground floor residential use along 2nd Avenue East is being directed to the APC. If it's not a significant item for not fitting in with the OCP requirements or compliance, then why is it on here, is my question.
Mr. Seals.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Vander Valk. The referral to the APC is not relevant to the OCP compliance. So council has just made that decision. That's past us now. So the process moving forward has been determined. The APC input is valuable, though, in terms of determining whether the approach should be changed on the commercial. We have approximately 70 meters. So Mayor Westbrook, I did the calculation. About 70 meters of the site is currently residential, plus or minus 10 meters because of my inaccurate measuring on the map. So that could be adjusted, and that's the type of adjustments we'd be looking for their input on. Staff consider the overall approach to be reasonable, especially considering that the previous proposal, the current zoning designation, has residential along the same frontage. So, I think it's no surprise that the current proponent referenced that approach and said, well, we could probably do something similar. And they've actually added a bit of commercial at the east end of the property that wasn't in the original proposal. So yeah, some mix, but directly to answer Councillor Vander Valk's question, it's being referred to the APC for general planning recommendations and design recommendations, not necessarily OCP compliance. That decision's done. Thank you.
Yes, that wasn't my question or what I was asking. I realize that the OCP compliance is done. My question was more if that having ground floor residential along 2nd Avenue is not important to OCP compliance, why would we bother asking the APC to discuss that? So just to clarify, I think you've answered that in your reply, but perhaps you misunderstood my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. I have nothing further to add on that. Thank you.
That's it for Councillor Vander Valk. Did you want to follow up on that? No. Okay. Councillor Young.
I also want to say that I wouldn't ask for affordable housing at this site, just because affordable housing could happen with the people that are moving out of their houses. We just had an earlier discussion about how we can do retrofits in a house and to make it more units for housing. We can also look at affordable housing on nonprofit lands, but not in a building where you want to maintain a certain price level.
I'm just made that comment because across the street in those 2 tall buildings, there are units that are below market value for rent. And I'm just asking if we could accommodate that in this building. Councillor Harrison.
And yeah, just for the clarity, because I was talking to someone in the community and they weren't even aware those units were below market. So there are 2 units that are allocated for town firefighters, basically for our volunteer firefighters across the street. I can't remember the exact amount. I think it's about $1,000 a month less for the rent, ballpark. But the whole reason is that our volunteer firefighters are required to live in Qualicum Beach, and especially for the younger firefighters who generally want to get the training and then move on to a big city. It can be really hard to pay rent and then also live in town. Some of the places where there's cheaper rent might be in more rural areas, but they're prohibited from living there and being a firefighter. Those are just the rules. You can discuss where those rules are fair or not, but that's just the way things set. So there were 2 units for firefighters. There's also 1 unit that had a really interesting arrangement, which I'm not sure I should talk about publicly or not, so I don't want to talk about it, but it actually is something that benefits the residents and is good for someone who's actually working in the community, providing a service and for the residents of the building. So it's a really neat arrangement. And generally, if we want to make asks, I don't think it's wrong to make asks of the developer. But I would highlight that I know this town doesn't always do fast well. We did the 3-story building on the waterfront pretty fast, and there hasn't been a lot of pushback on that. This one might get a little bit of pushback, but it's just more, if you want to be ambitious with what you're asking, then you probably should think about a fast process. And if you want to just accept what the developer is presenting, but you want to have a lot of feedback and back and forth and meetings, that's the other approach. But barring major changes in the cost of construction, the cost of labor, which I'm assuming is only going to go up because we have a wonderfully chaotic president in America who decides to intervene in all sorts of things and cause increased costs for everyone. I'd expect things to go up in the near future, sadly. So yeah, it's just, I think it's fair to ask the proponent, what can we do to work together and see if we can get some better outcomes? Whatever those outcomes are, there's a range. But if the traffic is the main one, and we're expecting some sort of contribution to the improvement, then that would be one conversation. I think though, if you layer too many asks, it starts to get unreasonable. So it's just more, we should prioritize if we want this project to move forward, which is an if. I don't know if council's there yet or not. What is the big ask that we'd like to make, and then what's reasonable and fair based on what we're approving?
Councillor Skipsey.
Thank you. Well, I wondered about whether there will be any conversation about green building or what code it would be built to. When I did a quick math calculation, when I looked at 42 units versus 69 units, it was about $1 million a year extra revenue in rents. So I think there's nothing wrong with asking for the community for some kind of public amenities or contributions. And I think the only other thing, well, I guess, yeah. Was there any changes from the comments that were given to the applicant at the Committee of the Whole meeting between that original proposal and what we're seeing today?
Mr. Seales?
Thank you. The application package is slightly different, but the actual plan has not changed. There just simply wasn't time. You know, the agenda deadlines and such, there was no significant changes.
Okay, except for the 6th floor disappeared on one end. Councillor Harrison.
And just to point out to Mr. Sales' point, the staff deadlines for the reports for the agenda are not 1 week before the agenda, it's several weeks before. So to his point, that's why there's sometimes a bit of a time crunch. But just to follow up on Councillor Skipsey's question, would it be correct in assuming, so for multifamily, there's a 4-step step code, and I think we passed a bylaw saying for multifamily and for single family, you should be targeting the most aggressive, so step 5 for single family and smaller projects and step 4 for multifamily, is that correct? So would it be built to step 4 or step 3?
Mr. Seales?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Harrison. It depends on when construction starts. So when the town implemented the step code requirements, there was a threshold that increased as of 2027. So, and I'd have to report back on exactly what that is, but this is a discussion. Council was very specific about what they would like to see for those requirements. So if the longer they wait, the more likely they would trigger those high increased requirements. Thank you.
And just to follow up too, there was a Vancouver Island Economic Development, what was it, VIEA, get together in October of last year. And Mark Holland, who did the consultation with Modus for Eaglecrest, did mention that shift from 3 to 4 for multifamily. In his experience for our market, it results in about a 25% increase in cost per square foot. Now, I haven't reviewed projects pro formas, so I obviously don't have a real number that I can point to exactly, but I did pay attention when there was a little housing conference that Mark Holland was sitting on when he mentioned that, because it is also another conversation we could have as a council. Like, do we prioritize that over the intersection? I mean, there's a fair debate. But I would point out too, like, step 3 is really, really good for environmental efficiency. The difference between step 3 and step 4 is not a game-changing amount of emissions, but it is better, to be fair, and better is always better. But yeah, I would be curious to see if I could find third-party data from people who actually have pro formas on the cost of construction between those two different codes, because it could have a big impact on A, what we can ask for, and B, what gets built.
Thank you. Councillor Skipsey and Councillor Vander.
I just had a question around asking the APC about form and character. What would be the guidelines that we would set out for that? Because there aren't any, as far as I'm aware, any form and character guidelines for the East Village.
Mrs. Hills?
Yes, thank you. So what we would typically present to the APC is the development permit area guidelines, which they're not as specific as the form and character guidelines for the uptown area, for example. So we would present those, and then they would assess the proposal in comparison to those guidelines. So they're not as visual as you might be, thinking of when you hear design guidelines, but design is addressed in those development permit area guidelines.
Okay. Councillor Vander.
Thank you. Also, for the APC, you're looking at building height. And I just wondered if, since we've generally been speaking in stories when we're having these discussions, that it might be worthwhile looking at ceiling heights within the building heights, because the 18.6 meters seems like a big jump. So if you could get 5 stories, 4 stories, 3 stories within with the lower ceiling heights, and that might make a difference as well in terms of things fitting into the area. For example, on 3022 Island Highway West, they have 3 stories with underground parking at a height of 11.44 meters. And they still have 9-foot ceilings, is what they told council. So I would like the APC to look at those ideas as well.
Councillor Young.
If we're going to have an ask, I did have a resident send an email this morning and said if the developer could facilitate the rewilding of the headwaters of the creek that are on or besides their property. So I thought that was an interesting idea. Maybe you can do some salmon fishing in East Village. Also, they asked that for the developer to control the release of pollutants and construction debris into the water table. So apparently there is it School Creek, that it is right around there that they want us to be mindful of, and for the developer to look into that.
Mr. Seals, I think that School Creek is quite a ways away, but is there any kind of tributary underneath this property?
Thank you. So not underneath the property. I think what the person that wrote to Councillor Young is referring to is there's a tributary to Beach Creek that runs under the school property, and then there's an open ditch north of Fern and Cedar, by the railway tracks there. And so there is some interaction. It is somewhat removed from the site. I think it's not a direct relationship between the two processes, but I think in answer to your second question, yeah, certainly the town can look at the quality and quantity of stormwater flowing off the site, because that is very important to the stormwater network. So yes, I think that's something we can look at. I don't think that the rewilding is necessarily something that we could bundle in with this project, but certainly a good discussion. But before fish are coming up this point of Schoolhouse Creek, we'd have to rebuild the entire culvert under Village Way, and the school would have to remove a lot of the school. So there's some steps before that happens.
Okay. Thank you for drawing our attention to having salmon fishing on 2nd Avenue. Councillor Harrison.
And I do think, too, some of these broader projects are kind of distinct. If we're going to have a broader, natural thing for an area that's pretty broad, it shouldn't be dependent on one property that isn't even directly adjacent. That's a little bit of too much of an ask. But it is a good conversation of itself. There was a great presentation I remember seeing about rehabilitation of streams and the importance of beavers. And it was a fascinating presentation on basically how beavers create wetlands and everything, and that's lovely. But I think that's very much a long-term conversation for another day. But you never know. It might be a tourism attraction. Coombs has the goats, we have the beavers. It all works out. But I think that's multiple years from now. I'm just sort of curious on something. Because I mentioned that staff have their report deadlines multiple weeks prior to the agenda being published. I think it's like 3 weeks, roughly, so their timelines are very different. But we don't have an option for first reading, and I wouldn't suggest we should be doing second or third, but there's no zoning amendment to do a first reading on today, is there?
Mr. Seals.
Through the chair to Councillor Harrison, that's correct. No, first reading is not on the agenda. To comply with Bill 44, we now need to advertise that there's not going to be a public hearing. It's a little bit counterintuitive and actually makes the process less efficient, but that's what they did. Thank you.
So the next motion is to refer this to the APC. And it has not been moved and seconded. So move Councillor Young, Councillor Harrison. Discussion on referring this to the APC. Councillor Vander.
Thank you. I would ask that we also include, in terms of what we're asking the APC to look at, is the parking location, the entry to the parking location, because I do think that that's where it is now is a very dangerous spot, and there's a lot of bikes going by, pedestrians going by. The loading zone is there, the entry to the parking is there, there's lots of things happening at that corner, and I would like the APC to look at an alternative entry to the parking location, or parking entry location.
And Councillor Skipsey? Do we need, I don't know if we need motions to approve a request like this. I think that's just for the record that these are the issues that have come up, including the intersection and now the entrance to the parkade. So that's something that just happens, that goes forward to staff, to the APC. But if you want to make a motion, you can.
I would like to make that motion because I have experience before where I've made suggestions or requests and they did not go forward to the APC.
Okay.
So I would like to amend it that we include that.
And that was seconded by Councillor Skipsey. Discussion on the entryway to the parkade. Councillor Harrison?
Just through the chair to staff, in the course of considering an application like this, would a traffic study be sort of customary for a project of this size?
Through the chair, yes.
Just to follow up on that, would that be something that would be reasonably able to be produced in a short timeline, or just because if we're going to get a traffic report that might answer a lot of these questions, or some of these questions, and then it'd be unfortunate we get the report and they say, oh, okay, well, let's get the APC's comment on the report after they've already gone to the APC. I'm just trying to make sure that when we go to the APC, we check off the list and everyone has the info and it's all done at once.
Thank you. Mr. Seals?
Yes, thank you. So the traffic report is underway, and a consultant's been engaged. The Advisory Planning Commission comment on the location of the driveway and parkade entrance, I think that's relevant. I think in terms of traffic safety, their comment isn't really required. So your request to have that referred to the APC, I think that's relevant because it has a design implication as well. not just traffic safety. But I would say, let's let the consultant and our engineering department comment on the traffic safety and prepare that for council. Thank you.
Thank you. So on that motion, on the amendment, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. Please proceed.
I don't have anything more at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Harrison.
The only other thing I wanted to point out too is that just from the proponent's perspective, I understand why staff can't do first reading because notification requirements, I get that. But it's also too, if we're going to ask for a very exhaustive APC meeting and we haven't even done first reading yet, I just want to make sure we don't have a situation where you spend tens of thousands of dollars to get all the studies done and get all the reports done, and then things fall on first reading. So I'm not saying the APC vote should be used as a proxy, but it's also too, if you're asking someone to invest high 5, maybe low 6 digits worth of soft costs, there might want to be some certainty of the project actually being able to move forward or not.
I don't think we can do that. I think we'll have to listen to the debate, get the information, and hopefully make a good and well-informed decision, and that will happen as soon as all that material is available.
That's fair too, because we do have to keep an open mind. It's just, I prefer the old way when we could do first reading, and then basically you have a litmus test of, if it fails at first reading, well, then you save a lot of money. Because I do think that's kind of fair. If you're going to say no, we'll say no up front, and off we go. Yeah, I do understand why we are where we are with all this procedurally.
Thank you. So, anything else that we would like to ask the APC? All right. Councillor Vander.
Thank you. Well, I think my question about building height and ceiling height didn't really go anywhere, so maybe we could include that, building height and ceiling height.
Thank you. So building height is one of the recommended areas to refer to the APC. The reference was made to 3022, so I just want to go over the comment that I made previously. That project, because it's being built into the slope, will appear artificially low, the height, because the way that grade is calculated. So it had the grade working in its favor. This one is relatively flat, for the perspective of neither an advantage or a disadvantage. So anytime there's a reference to, well, 3022 did, parkade plus 3 stories and only had this height, it's just not apples to apples because it was building into the slope. So happy to have the APC review height. I think ceiling height will flow into that. Just want to caution against any direct comparisons with a project that's being built into a slope. Thank you.
Yeah, and building height is on the list of the. It's not on this anymore. The slide disappeared, but anyway, it's on the record. Anything else, Councillor Harrison?
I do think too, maybe just an informal conversation for staff, whether I don't know if it'd be a public conversation or not, because usually proprietary financial information goes in camera. But if we are going to be making asks, then getting a sense of what's needed to make those asks viable. So firstly, on our side, we need to figure out what is the ask we want to make. Right now, it seems like it's traffic improvement. And then work with the developer to say, okay, if we're going to have this ask, what's a reasonable scope for that? And then how do we work together to actually make sure it's viable in the long run? Because again, there is a council lens where we have a big impact on whether you can get something extra or not in a way that's viable based on our timelines. But because I also understand there's an election coming up. We can do multiple readings now, I think, under the new legislation on one meeting, but there's not a lot of meetings left. So whenever you have that turnover too, there's probably be 1 or 2 new folks, who knows how many. So there'll always be a bit of delay too. So I'm just sort of cognizant of all this, that I think it's fair to ask for things, but it's also it has to work. The pro forma has to pencil out. So I'm not sure how staff has that conversation in a delicate way, but it might be useful for us to know whether it's a public report or a private verbal update on ballpark what we can ask for this fair and ballpark what's needed to make that happen.
Well, let's vote on this and get to work. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next item, zoning amendment 1025 Qualicum Road.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Westbrook. I'm Slides, please advance. There we go. Okay, so once again, we're dealing with OCP compliance. This one is relatively straightforward, I would say. The request is for them to, they would like to increase the floor area ratio from 0.17 to 0.19, and the parcel coverage from 11 to 13. But more importantly, from the perspective of OCP compliance, the land uses are staying exactly the same. So if council does advance this, it essentially means that the buildings have a little bit more opportunity to occupy slightly more of the land, which has some implications on building height. So not a part of this application, but just a side comment. So staff very much consider this to be compliant with the OCP. It would be hard to argue otherwise. Thank you.
Okay, let's deal with that first. I have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Young, Councillor Harrison, discussion on the first item. Councillor Vander.
Sorry, I'm trying to get my papers all organized here. I just had a quick question, hopefully, and it might be more along the, on page 399, where you have the zoning comparison and the existing zoning and the proposed changes. My understanding is that allowing golf equipment storage is not shown as a change, and it seems like it is a change. So perhaps you could clarify that for me, please.
Yes, thank you. So that question sort of relates to the swimming pool comment as well, right? You know, so swimming pools are permitted. So why are they saying if we do this, then we're going to build a swimming pool? The challenge is that they're going to run out of building area. So when it comes to some of the maintenance facilities and the amenities like the pool that they mention, if the increase to parcel coverage is not permitted, they simply won't have enough permitted floor area to build those types of things, whether it's maintenance or the pool. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Councillor Skipsey?
I don't know if this is a question for this one or the next one, but in the letter we received, it said, another important advantage of the additional lot coverage will be a reduction, the massing of the condominium structures. This would reduce building heights from 6 stories to 4 stories, which has long been a preferred format in Qualicum Beach. I'm not sure how this all intertwines. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Through the chair. So this site overall permits 225 dwelling units, right? So that's the existing zoning. If you take those 225 dwelling units and lay them out on the site, it basically means that for the 3 remaining condo sites, there's a certain number of units that are allocated. If you stack those units 4 high, it takes up more room on the site. If you stack them 6 high, then they fit. They just barely fit. So in other words, what this increase in parcel coverage would allow, it would allow them the flexibility to spread out a little bit more, which means they don't need to stack all the permitted uses or all the permitted dwelling units all the way up to 6 stories. So this allows them to spread out more, and the letter states that they could potentially decrease from 6 to 4. This isn't the zoning amendment where we're considering that because we don't even have plans, but in theory, it's absolutely correct. If the parcel coverage is not increased, it will push the building higher in order to fit the same number of units.
Go ahead.
Thank you. That makes sense. I did have a question about the panhandles. I'm not understanding why those are there if they're not to be used. So what is the purpose?
Yes, thank you. That is a little bit odd. It's just directly related to the subdivision requirements in our zoning bylaws. So because the access road through here is a shared internal access for the use of the strata, they needed to have access onto the public right-of-way in order to complete the subdivision. So it's checking a box for the subdivision process. It's not really relevant to council's approval process.
Okay.
Well, I just wonder if there's a purpose for having that in our procedures or whatnot. Like, would it be worth amending our procedures so that that wouldn't be a requirement going forward? I mean, not for this particular application or anything, but.
Mr. Seals.
Thank you. It's something we can certainly look at. It also relates to or road access requirements in the Land Title Act. So it's not even, it's beyond just the town requirements. But if it's something that, you know, we need to look at in the future, it doesn't come up very often because this is an unusual circumstance. But you know, considering that everybody's looking at this and saying, hold on, that makes no sense, maybe it warrants a discussion, but probably not something we'd change now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the first item is moved and seconded. For the discussion, Councillor Harrison.
I was just going to point out that I think it sounds like we might be getting a pool in town. And I remember distinctly in the previous term when Parksville was offered a pool and they ended up with an RV park on their waterfront. So I am very much in favor, if you're going to reduce demand on Ravensong for the private sector business, Godspeed, knowing what Ravensong costs the taxpayers. But it does sound like that's going to be a really neat addition, and there doesn't seem like there's a big ask from the proponent. They're actually asking to have less building height. So I think that aligns pretty well.
All right, ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Number C, development permit.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. This one staff considered to be largely a housekeeping item. So the development permit area guidelines for the entire Pheasant Glen development states that subdivision has to be approved via development permit. And because the development permit authority wasn't delegated to staff, they need a new development permit to increase from 2 parcels here to creating a 3rd one here. The reason these are being created as independent parcels relates to, you know, ownership, financing, various things that are outside of the town's scope or need to fully understand. But bottom line is that this would comply with the town's subdivision bylaw, but it requires council authorization to proceed with the subdivision. Thank you.
Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Young, Councillor Harrison, discussion. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. Number D.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. This is a property that at some stage in the future, there will be a new house constructed on it, 2669 Island Highway West. They're proposing foreshore improvements modeled after the Green Shore requirements, although my understanding is that they're not proposing to certify through the Green Shores process. So what you see here is this is the property boundary here. So there's essentially constructing a low-sloped revetment, which with natural planting on the top of it. So in your package, we have completed the assessment process that was identified through the Waterfront Master Plan years ago, so an engineering review. And from that perspective, it is something that would essentially be a positive contribution in total to both the property and the waterfront. The only area where it could be improved and maybe it might be warranted in the future, but because they're confined to working entirely within the property boundary, it means they don't have the opportunity to make this slope even more gradual. But at this point, staff wouldn't be comfortable recommending that they go through a multi-year approval process with the province, which is what that would imply. So under the circumstances, this is actually a very good proposal that supports the long-term plans for the site.
Thank you. We have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Young, Councillor Vander. Discussion. Councillor Harrison.
So a few years ago, Mr. Sales and I were part of a working group because of all the fun the first time a private sector property owner tried to do Green Shores and the endless number of, as soon as they approve it, we'll approve it. Well, as soon as they approve it, we'll approve it. And folks realize it's not a very efficient way. I'm just wondering, like, I know you're not recommending we go down that route, but have you heard any feedback in terms of improvements in that process? Because I know the provincial staff were talking quite actively about how they can harmonize with the Department of Fisheries and really improve that turnaround time to make it more reasonable for folks who are looking to do things like this.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Harrison. I think there's a lot of support in principle for this type of a treatment, but they haven't gotten to the stage of actually institutionalizing it so that people can walk through without a lot of friction. So So in terms, I've never seen a proposal go through quickly to date, so that would indicate that maybe the work has not been done.
Okay. Any further discussion? Councillor Skipsey.
Well, Ron left a long time ago, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask, will the mature shore pine tree be retained, or could it be?
Mr. Seals?
Thank you. I don't know the answer to that question. The report is silent, and my only response would be that it is subject to the tree protection bylaw. So we'd have to look at it through the lens of that, not necessarily through the lens of this proposal.
Okay. Anything else? It was moved and seconded. Further discussion. All in favor? Opposed, if any, carried. And I think that concludes the agenda for today. So lots of stuff done. Thank you, staff, for all the work you put in. And thank you, council, for doing your homework. You obviously did, because you had lots of comments, lots of questions, so well done. And a motion to adjourn would be appropriate. Councillor Harrison, Councillor Young, we are adjourned. Thank you.